Michelle Lay, a 26-year-old nursing student, after informing a colleague that she needed to retrieve something from her car, she set off towards the parking lot. The hospital surveillance footage shows her leaving the building and heading towards the parking lot. But unfortunately, the camera's range doesn't extend far enough to capture her entire path. Michelle is seen walking into the parking lot, but not coming out. It was a warm evening in California on May 27, 2011, and Michelle Lay was nowhere to be found. Although she seemed to have left voluntarily, the police suspected something suspicious had happened to her. They searched extensively to find her. They wondered if someone had intentionally targeted Michelle in a harmful plan. Hayward is a vibrant city located in the East Bay. Its diverse population contributes to a dynamic cultural scene with local festivals, markets, and many dining options. The city is known for its parks, including the scenic Hayward Japanese Gardens, which offer a peaceful escape. However, a mysterious disappearance unfolded right in the midst of it and resulted in the resurfacing of the secrets and rage that had been buried for years. Michelle Hang Tai Lee was born on October 12, 1984, in Rancho Peñasquitos, a suburban community located in the northeastern part of San Diego. She grew up in a loving family with her younger brother Michael, and they often visited their cousins. After graduating from Mount Carmel High School in 2002, she moved to the Bay Area to continue her studies. She attended San Jose State before transferring to San Francisco State University. Michelle always wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps and become a nurse practitioner. But her mother passed away due to cancer when Michelle was a teenager. Michelle was eventually enrolled in a nursing program at Samuel Merritt University in Oakland, where she could fulfill her dream. Although she had moved away from her family, she remained close to them and was the center of their affection. She loved spending time with them and was known for her loving and caring nature at home. At work, she was valued for her sincerity and discipline. Michelle was expected to accomplish great things, but life had an unexpected turn waiting for her. On May 27, 2011, at the Kaiser Permanente Medical Center in California, it started out as an ordinary day. Michelle Lay was working her regular shift until late afternoon when things took a turn. Around 6:55 p.m., an hour before her shift was to end, Michelle told her coworkers she had to get something from her car. A white Honda SUV parked outside the hospital, and she walked out of the building. The CCTV recorded her walking to the lot and out of the camera range. That was the last time Michelle was seen. 2 hours later, around 9 p.m., Michelle's instructor, Lori Rosa, noticed her unusually long absence. Michelle was known for being punctual, so Lori grew concerned. Michelle hadn't completed her shift or signed out. Lori searched the maternity ward for Michelle but couldn't locate her. She tried contacting Michelle through text and phone calls, but received no response. A nurse informed Lori that Michelle had gone to her car earlier, but hadn't come back. Lori and a security guard went to the parking lot to search for Michelle, but neither Michelle nor her car was there. Just as Lori was about to leave, Michelle's car suddenly appeared. Lori felt relieved, thinking Michelle had returned. However, her relief was short-lived. The car backed up so fast that it almost hit another car. Then it sped away with a loud screech, leaving Lori and the security guard feeling shocked and confused. Because it was dark, she couldn't see who was driving the car. Without hesitation, she immediately called 911. Lori's suspicions proved to be more than just a feeling. Michelle did not make it home after leaving the parking lot, nor did she meet up with friends as planned the following day. After Lori reported her disappearance, the Hayward Police Department launched an extensive search for Michelle. They contacted Michelle's family, who had no information about her whereabouts. Michelle remained missing, but her car was discovered elsewhere. Around 9 a.m. after she went missing, Michelle's white Honda SUV was found parked on Ponderosa Court, about a half mile from the medical center. The car was neatly parked, locked, and its contents looked undisturbed, showing no signs of a struggle. It seemed like Michelle had parked the car herself after leaving the medical center in a hurry. However, investigators couldn't figure out why Michelle would leave suddenly, without any apparent reason. Despite the apparent impression, the investigators were of the view that the discovery of the car was far from innocent. It, in fact, only deepened the mystery. In the initial hours, the police crafted a preliminary theory about Michelle's disappearance. Did Michelle leave willingly? Was her trip to get something from her car planned? Could she have been tricked into leaving by a phone call? Investigators suspected someone Michelle knew might be involved in her disappearance. They believed a crucial clue was nearby. As news spread among Michelle's extended family, friends, and colleagues, her phone buzzed with a flood of worried messages and calls. Unfortunately, none of them were answered. Something strange was about to unfold. One of these concerned messages got a reply from Michelle. It should have been great news, but the message was, well, eerie. I'm not missing. My phone has been crazy and it deleted everything. The mystery continued when several people received replies from Michelle's phone. Each message was emotionally distant and unlike the Michelle they knew. I had a flat tire. I had a bad night last night. All these messages killed my battery. Just taking it easy. I'm sick. As the police looked into these messages, they found that several were exactly the same. They had been copied and sent repeatedly. Then, just as suddenly as they had started, the messages stopped altogether. The location where they originated was inside the hospital. These strange messages increased worry among Michelle's family and friends, and left the police puzzled. However, the messages reinforced their suspicion that someone Michelle knew might be involved in her disappearance. The search for Michelle continued. The family traveled 8 hours from their home to be in the city where Michelle had gone missing and to support the ongoing search. The family put up billboards and offered a reward for information about her whereabouts, but it seemed like Michelle had fallen off the face of the earth. Over the next 4 months, at least 8 volunteer search efforts were undertaken, some organized by the Kloss Kids Foundation, a nonprofit organization based in Sausalito, California, devoted to assisting in recovery of missing people. A variety of missing persons organizations joined in the searches, but there was a parallel search that the investigators were involved in: the search for the suspect and the missing pieces of the fateful day. From the start, the police suspected that Michelle's disappearance involved someone she knew well. With this in mind, they launched an investigation to reconstruct the events that might have led to her vanishing. There were unanswered questions that investigators were focusing on. Starting with Michelle's car. Despite its outward appearance of being clean, they couldn't rule out the possibility that it held clues not immediately visible. As a result, the car was taken in for further investigation. The second investigative thread police followed were the CCTV cameras, positioned in and around the parking lot. This examination aimed to uncover any overlooked clues or elusive details that could shed light on the mysterious circumstances. The investigators' last lead was Michelle's relationships and connections. They began interviewing people who knew her, beginning with her family. They sought to understand if she had any conflicts or issues with anyone. During their inquiries, one name surfaced prominently: Giselle Esteban, a friend with whom Michelle had recently had a falling out.
We heard about Michelle Lee. Michelle?
Oh, God, what about her?
She went missing last night from her work.
Okay.
And talking to her friends and such, we understand that you guys had a tumultuous relationship.
A tumultuous relationship? She was my best friend who slept with my then fiance.
How long has she been missing?
Since yesterday.
And have you guys tried calling her?
I have no idea how to help you with that. I've actually been trying to look for her.
Since when?
Almost a week now, to tell her to stay away from my daughter.
The police promptly contacted Giselle for a brief conversation, only to discover that she was also searching for Michelle. Giselle Diwag Esteban was born on February 4, 1984, in Union City, California. She later moved to San Diego and ended up living in the same neighborhood as Michelle when they were children. Michelle and Giselle attended the same high school and became close friends. When Giselle moved to college, Michelle followed her there to attend the same college and even lived in the same neighborhood. Their connected lives made them the closest of friends, navigating the journey of college and career goals together. Michelle joined Giselle at the university in 2003. However, in 2002, Giselle had met a boy named Scott Marasegan. Well, they were both freshmen at San Francisco State University. Later, when Michelle joined in, Giselle introduced Scott to her. It seemed like there might be a bit of a love triangle developing there. Giselle's growing interest in Scott could potentially complicate things since Michelle and Scott are close friends now. Relationships can get pretty tangled when emotions are involved. A new chapter began when Giselle and Scott started dating. It should have been a fresh start, but things didn't turn out that way. One day, Michelle sent a text to Scott, informing him about an unwanted pregnancy that she was carrying. She had decided to go for an abortion. The message was meant for Scott only as a friend, but instead of him seeing it, Giselle happened to see it and misread it. It was not Scott's baby. However, Giselle was convinced that it was. No number of explanations from Scott seemed to satisfy Giselle. Whether it was this new development or the bitterness that traveled down since the time Michelle and Scott dated, Michelle always remained a topic of conflict between Giselle and Scott since that. Even after what happened, it was a long-term relationship. And despite years of togetherness with Scott, Giselle grappled with insecurities in the relationship, and the passage of time failed to bridge the emotional gap. She harbored frequent suspicions about Scott's loyalty, prompting her to routinely check his phone calls or second-guessing everything he said. Giselle especially wanted Scott to break off his friendship with Michelle. Despite the ups and downs and a brief breakup, Giselle gave birth to their daughter on October 31, 2005. However, 3 years later, in 2008, frequent disagreements between Giselle and Scott continued to occur. Their relationship ended because they couldn't trust each other and solve their problems. They shared custody of their daughter for a year, but then one day in 2009, Giselle told Scott that she was moving in with a new boyfriend. Giselle took the baby back to San Diego, which began a legal custody battle between Scott and Giselle. Eventually, Scott won 80% of the custody and brought his daughter back to Northern California. It's important to note here that Michelle had kept her friendship alive with both Scott and Giselle even during these trying times. But after the breakup, Giselle gave Michelle an ultimatum to choose between Scott and her. As for Scott and Giselle, life remained complex as they kept their connections on and off, sliding back into intermittent physical relationships from time to time, even after their separation. It was only the beginning of more bitterness that was about to follow. In the meantime, a new development came out of the forensic examination of the car. Even though the police had not been successful in finding Michelle, they realized she might have died. This conclusion was drawn on the basis that the car contained the blood remains of Michelle Lay.
Our primary concern was, is, and will always be to find Michelle and bring her home with us. At this point, she is still missing, and we will fight to bring her home every day until we have her with our family again.
Although the family found it hard to believe, the missing person case was now a homicide case. The second finding at the spot where the car was parked was more blood. a pool spanning 10.5 inches on the ground. Then, inside the car, they found Michelle's nursing school ID. It was kept there to be shown to the instructor when required. But was that so? The ID turned out to be strange indeed, because eventually the instructor could not recognize it, and that is when police decided to gather more information about it. And there it was. The truth. The ID didn't belong to Michelle. Instead, it was a stolen identification card reported just a few weeks ago. Also, the investigators traced the cell phone, right from the moment Michelle had walked out of the hospital into the parking lot. The cell phone had taken a long circle around the city of Hayward, got back into the hospital, only to move out again. The cell phone was last located in a remote wooded hilly area of Alameda County. However, the trail of oddity did not end there. An emergency ward nurse had come forward to narrate a strange call from Michelle the evening she went missing. Just half an hour after Michelle left the hospital, a call came into the emergency ward, answered by the nurse mentioned earlier. The caller claimed to be Michelle Lay and wanted her instructor to know why she wasn't there. According to the caller, Michelle Lay, her father had a heart attack and was brought to a hospital, but she didn't know which one. She was checking all the hospitals and wouldn't return to work as planned. Whoever made the call put a lot of heart into it, but they missed a simple detail. The call was made to the emergency ward, but Michelle was posted in the maternity ward. And Michelle's father was in Vietnam. Another detail that the real Michelle should have known. It seemed as though all the angles police had taken were coming back with surprises. Hours of CCTV analysis showed a person walking into the hospital, who, however, was not a very surprising name: Giselle Esteban. The next few months, Giselle Esteban was often called by the police, but not much came of it. Summer had given way to autumn. The reward to bring information about Michelle's disappearance had been increased to $100,000. There were frequent volunteer searches that initially started with passion, but now began to wane. Michelle's family did not find the pace of the police in dealing with the case satisfactory, and a private detective was hired. Meanwhile, the police quietly focused on the person at the top of their list in red, Giselle Esteban. But what was the key piece of evidence that could seal the case? Perhaps that crucial link was concealed within the background of Giselle Esteban and her interviews with the investigators. The ID found in the car was stolen from Michelle's nursing school. Security cameras at the school showed Giselle walking around the area a few days before. With this piece of evidence, Giselle was no longer a blind trail. Her phone was traced using wireless tower activation from the night of the incident. Her phone was detected in a remote area of Alameda County, where Michelle's phone was turned off and later turned on again around the same time everyone received messages from Michelle. Both women's phones followed the same route. There was a lot of evidence suggesting that Giselle Esteban knew something about Michelle Lay. But since Michelle's body hadn't been found, the police couldn't prove for sure what had happened to her and how Giselle was involved. Only a few weeks down the lane, something else was coming. An even deeper story of what Giselle really thought, not merely what she filtered out during the conversations with police. An inside story came from Scott. When he woke up to find Michelle's cell phone in the backseat of his car, he immediately called the police. He was petrified and told the police he was being set up by someone. He alluded to Giselle by that someone. A backstory followed in Scott's conversation with police. It was 2009. After winning custody, Scott was living with his daughter in Northern California. Just a few months later, Giselle had managed to move back to live in the same area. One day, Giselle suggested to Scott and Michelle that since all three of them lived nearby, they should all meet to let go of the past and revive the friendship. Michelle was on board with the plan. Scott did not find any harm in it either, and so the meeting took place. However, Giselle did not end up liking her own idea the way she had anticipated. The meeting had stirred something in Giselle, and she disliked Michelle even more then. She blamed Michelle for the fact that her relationship with Scott ended. A hateful obsession was in the making. Giselle could not stop spewing hate against Michelle during conversations with Scott. During one such meet at a coffee shop, Giselle threw a cup of coffee on Scott because he did not seem to be entertaining the hypothetical idea of how it would be in case someone who hated Michelle disfigured her. The obsession began to escalate at such a rate that Scott started to save Giselle's hateful messages. During the conversation with police, Scott showed some of these messages that Giselle had sent to Michelle and Scott in February of 2011. The message that she had sent to Michelle was, "If you were really anybody's friend, mine or Scott's, you would just f*** off and leave my family alone. But all you are is the who had nothing better to do and follow me to San Francisco. That's all you will ever be, the who slept with other people's men and brothers because no one wanted you. You aren't my friend. You are always just a parasite." Giselle then sent a text message to both Scott and Michelle. "You two really do deserve each other. I hope you get what you deserve. You are both pathetic. You with no dreams or goals, and the other chasing after someone else's dreams because she has none of her own. You are both parasites." However, these were not the end of the hateful messages. Scott and Michelle would keep getting them the next day and the next, and that went on for a month. Just 3 days before Michelle disappeared, Scott had filed for a temporary restraining order against Giselle. He claimed she threatened him and his family. According to Scott, Giselle had broken into his home the same day Michelle had gone missing. Scott also turned in the audio clip that he recorded one day when Giselle and Scott were driving with their daughter in the back seat.
I asked you, can we just be honest about Michelle, because she's the one issue that I really, really am having a hard time dealing with.
That's not what you said at all.
Yes! Okay, well then fine. Starting from now, we are going to be honest about Michelle. Do you understand me? Whether you sleep with her, whether you share food with her, whether you talk to her, you will be honest with me. Look at me! You will be honest with me regarding her. Otherwise, I will take your life and hers. Mom. And you can take that to the grave with you.
Why?
Why? Because you lied about her so many times, it's hard to believe that you didn't sleep with her and lock her up. You deserve to die for your lies, as does she. And you will. If you do it again, this is your last and final warning.
Why?
Do you understand me? It's your last and final warning.
The intent of the murder was there, rage and revenge. But as for that definite link that the police had long been chasing for, it was hidden in a new development. Giselle's DNA was found in Michelle's car. There was something on Giselle's shoes. The investigators took the shoes in, and as it turned out, the shoes were laced with Michelle's blood. With the profound evidence, Giselle Esteban was arrested on September 7, 2011, around 4 months after Michelle's disappearance. But was Michelle ever found? The 8th search for Michelle ended in the finding of human remains in a remote canyon area on September 17, 2011. The body was so badly decomposed that even the gender could not be identified. Eventually, on September 19, 2011, 12 days after Giselle's arrest, the Alameda County Coroner's Office positively identified the discovered remains to be those of Michelle Lay. However, because the state her body was found in, autopsy could not establish how Michelle was killed. According to the police and later prosecution, Giselle's premeditated, elaborate plan included stalking Michelle, keeping ahead of her schedule every day, calling Kaiser Meditente Hospital to know if she had checked in, to arrange her number and the address from several mutual people. She even went to the Apple store during the day of the crime to know how to reset an iPhone. Giselle had begun to track down Michelle and asked around for her address to a number of mutual friends from college. She finally followed her to the Kaiser facility in Hayward, attacked her in the parking lot, threw her body into Michelle's car, and drove away from Hayward, ultimately out to the Pleasanton-Sunnell Valley Road area, and within sort of a makeshift grave buried Michelle's body out there. We will never know the cause of death of Michelle Lay, because Giselle contended she was not guilty. She denied having done anything to Michelle and stuck by the story she gave during police interrogations earlier. However, in December of 2011, Giselle Esteban was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. She was found guilty of first-degree murder. She was 2 months pregnant when she planned the murder of her friend Michelle Lay. Giselle's computer revealed she had conducted around 300 internet searches for the name Michelle Lay. Other searches included how to follow someone without getting caught, how to find someone who doesn't want to be found, is there a certain chemical that can induce heart attacks without leaving a trace, how to induce a heart attack, where to buy potassium chloride. In 2012, she gave birth to her second daughter with Scott while being in prison. According to Scott's own admission, Michelle and Scott never dated after that 1 month during college, and never had physical relations during or after their relationship. Michelle was merely a friend to Scott and to Giselle. Jealousy is an ordinary emotion, with a corrosive potential to surpass all the boundaries of ordinariness. In the case of Giselle, she had plunged into a dark psychological state that led to obsessive thoughts, intense feelings of betrayal, and a distorted sense of reality. In such instances, the toxic blend of jealousy and unchecked emotion can tragically propel someone towards committing unthinkable acts. Even though Giselle showed signs of hatred and hostility, Michelle didn't realize the danger she was in. Scott also didn't fully understand how serious Giselle's threats and obsession had become. On the other hand, the children of Scott and Giselle are left destined to grow up with a mother behind bars. In the complex and intense swirl of emotions, Giselle's jealousy became a formidable force. Toxic relationships are unfortunately common, and Scott displayed typical patterns of a victim in an abusive situation, fluctuating in and out of the relationship. However, there might have been signs that Scott overlooked, which could have prompted him to alert the authorities and possibly prevent the tragic outcome. Have you ever been in a toxic relationship, as rough as the one discussed here? And why do you think Scott and Michelle might have missed these warning signs despite years of togetherness with Giselle? Let us know in the comment section below.
Jacksonville 911, Archibald.
Yes, I want to report a car stolen. It's a 95 Honda Civic.
You know who stole it?
No, I don't. It's a 95 Honda Civic, and somebody just took off.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me just check and make sure it wasn't towed or anything, all right?
It couldn't have been towed, not that quick. And it's my kid is in the back, still in the back of the car. My kid is in the back of the car.
The dispatcher was momentarily caught off guard, as not only was he reporting a car being stolen, but his girlfriend, Lonna Lauramore Barton's 21-month-old son, Lonzie Barton, had been abducted along with his vehicle. Little did anyone know that the search for the little boy would become one of the largest missing child cases in Jacksonville. But as the investigation intensified, police uncovered several alarming clues that suggested something more sinister had happened. Where was Lonzie Barton, a 21-month-old child? What was the truth behind his kidnapping? On Friday, July 24, 2015, at 2:22 a.m., 911 dispatchers received a call from Ruben Ebron, who reported his car, a bright orange and black 1995 Honda Civic, was stolen from his Ravenwood apartment complex. The call took a darker turn when Ebron told the dispatcher that his girlfriend's son, Lonzie Barton, was in the back seat at the time. He explained to the dispatcher that he tried to chase down the car, but was unable to catch up. Within minutes, police arrived at the Ravenwood apartment complex, where Ebron lived with his girlfriend Lonna Lauramore Barton and her 2 children. 21-month-old Lonzy, and 5-year-old Lily. Ebron told officers that he had been on his way to fetch his girlfriend Lonna from her job at Wacko's Gentlemen's Club, where she worked as a dancer. He had placed both Lonzy and Lily into the car to take them along for a drive. But soon after he started the car engine, he realized he'd forgotten something in the apartment. While the car was still in the parking lot, he left both children in the back seat and ran up to get his things. When he left the room, he noticed Lily had followed him and preferred to watch TV instead of fetching Lonna. He started playing the movie Aladdin and planned to get Lonzy from the car so both siblings could stay home. However, upon stepping outside the apartment, he saw the car being driven away. Ebron later informed officers that he attempted to chase the vehicle on foot but couldn't catch up in time. After police interviewed and questioned Ebron about the incident, an Amber Alert was issued and the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office took over the investigation, with the team being led by Sheriff Mike Williams and Chief Investigator Tom Hackney. Officers hurriedly started the investigation and searched the whole area nearby. It was almost 15 minutes into the search when they found Ebron's car was a mile from the apartment complex. The keys were still in the ignition, but there was no sign of Lonzy in the car or anywhere nearby. Police hoped that someone who saw a child wandering the streets would make a report to authorities, but no such report was received. Authorities questioned Ebron again and informed him that teams of officers had visited the laundromat and gas station he claimed to have visited the previous day with Lonzy and Lily. Nothing of significance was found in either area. By Friday morning, the community had joined the search for Lonzy. Residents from the Ravenwood apartment complex joined the search effort by handing flyers and putting up missing persons posters in the area to assist the police. Investigators also made contact with Lonzy's biological father, Christopher Barton, who lived in Bakers County. Officers were sent to his home to question about Lonzy and his possible whereabouts, but Christopher was eventually cleared of any involvement in the toddler's disappearance. A second team of officers visited Lonna's workplace and questioned other staff and patrons about anything that seemed out of the ordinary that night before. According to staff, nothing seemed different, and Lonna was her usual self at work the entire night. But police were still suspicious about Ebron, particularly investigator Tom Hackney, who wanted to take a closer look at the man who was minding the children. Ebron offered no resistance when he was asked to go down to the police station for questioning. Investigators began by asking Ebron to describe the events of the previous night. He maintained his original account of how the day had unfolded. Ebron explained that he frequently looked after the children when Lonna was working. The interview was relaxed, but investigators suspected Ebron might be withholding information crucial to finding Lonzy. Lonna was also questioned by police and cooperated with the investigation fully. She told officers that she had left Lonzy and Lily in the care of Ebron while she worked that night. Lonna also informed them that she last saw her son before leaving for work at 8:30 p.m. that Thursday night, and he had seemed well and untroubled. Lonna was allowed to leave as there was no other information she could provide in the investigation. The officers also allowed her to spend some time with Ebron before his next round of questioning, as police watched them through the camera during the breaks in between questioning. It became clear to officers that both Ebron and Lonna seemed concerned about each other's well-being, which investigators found strange as they were dealing with a missing child. After Lonna was allowed to leave the station, officers returned to question Ebron. Investigators asked more leading questions and ironed out the creases from Ebron's statements. He eventually confessed to returning to the apartment to get cocaine that he intended to sell when he went to pick up Lonna from the club. Ebron's frustration with the police became evident as he grew angry and demanded to know if he was being viewed as a suspect. Despite lacking physical evidence linking Ebron to Lonzy's disappearance, the police charged him with child neglect for leaving Lonzie and Lily in the car with the engine running while he left to obtain drugs for himself. As a consequence, Ebron was arrested and detained at the county jail. With Ebron in custody, police began delving into his personal background and uncovered his troubling criminal history. Police found several court documents filed against Ebron in Duval County, dating back as far as 2005. These charges included armed robbery and assault charges brought against him by his ex-girlfriend. Ebron was also given probation for a grand theft auto charge. According to the court documents, Ebron was also accused of harming both his ex-girlfriend and their son after he violently assaulted her while she was carrying the child. He had also been accused of stalking by his ex-girlfriend. Additionally, he also attacked one of her sisters, which led to the sister being hospitalized. Ebron also threatened to shoot his ex-girlfriend's 12-year-old niece and had a drug charge carried over from Bakers County. But that was not all. There were new charges brought against Ebron by the same ex-girlfriend, who alleged that he assaulted her in the apartment he shared with Lonna and her children on July 1st of 2015. The assault occurred when she had gone to fetch the children she shared custody of with Ebron. This occurred while Lonna's children were in the living room. These charges painted a dark picture of Ebron. Police started to question whether there was more to Lonzie's disappearance than what their primary suspect was disclosing. But even though police were questioning Ebron's version of events, the search for Lonzie did not stop. By Saturday, over 100 police officers were deployed to search the surrounding parks and forested areas. Bloodhounds and other canines were used in the search for the missing toddler. Searches by helicopter were conducted over the heavily wooded areas in and around Jacksonville. He was blue-eyed and blonde, the image of a cherub, as many people would say. His young life was one of turmoil, with a disrupted family life, and people were desperately trying to locate him. On Sunday, July 26, police dive teams started searching the lakes and waterways in and around Jacksonville. They believed that it was possible that a child, considering his age, could have wandered into one of the waterways without any adult supervision. But soon the weekend stretched into days, and there was still no sign of Lonzie. After 10 days of intensive searching, police reduced their efforts as the likelihood of finding Lonzie alive began to diminish.
This started Friday morning at about 2:20 in the morning as a report of an auto theft and abduction that began search efforts in and around the Briarwood neighborhood where the case was originally reported. Worked from a window of time from Thursday night at 8 p.m. to 2:20 Friday morning when the report was called in through 911. Our efforts now have turned, again, like I had alluded to before, this is less of a missing persons investigation, more of a homicide investigation. Days have slipped by. 21-month-old is out on his own somewhere. That is a turn of events that's bad, and it begins to keep going the same.
During the search for Lonzie, 2 additional bodies were found. The first discovery was made on July 27th, near overgrown bushes by a business park near Southside Boulevard. It was believed as an adult male who had been reported missing a year earlier, according to police. The second was the skeletal remains of a man discovered in a pond near the 5400 block of Bowdoin Road. The remains were discovered in a submerged late 1980s Mazda RX-7, and police believe that it might have been in the pond for years. No foul play had been suspected in either case. Despite these grisly discoveries, there was still no sign of Lonzie. The sheriff's office released a statement to the public and urged anyone with information to come forward. A fund was set up, and an amount of $12,800 was raised by the public. Police announced that the money would be used as a reward to be given to anyone with information that could lead to the discovery of Lonzie. But police were about to stumble across key evidence that made the case take a dark and twisted turn. After scouring the neighborhood for information, investigators found an important piece of video evidence. A residential CCTV security camera picked up a video of Ebron's orange Honda speeding down the road toward the area where the car was located. About 10 minutes later, the same camera captured Ebron running away from the direction of the car toward the apartment complex. Upon reviewing the timestamps, police found that Ebron's call had been made another 10 minutes after he was observed running back on camera. Police confronted Ebron with the footage, and he did not have an answer for them. He insisted that he didn't do anything to Lonzie, but police theorized that he had harmed Lonzie and used the abduction as a cover-up story. Ebron refused to answer any further questions and wanted a lawyer to be present when he next spoke to police. Investigators were convinced that Ebron was involved, but they didn't know if Lonna played a part in the cover-up and decided it was time to bring her in for questioning once again. What puzzled the police was that Lonna, as a mother, would have knowingly permitted such a violent man to care for and live in the same apartment as her children. Police were also puzzled by the fact that she let him openly use and sell drugs near her young children. Lonna was brought in by police after the surveillance footage was publicly released. In her interview with investigators, it turned out she had been withholding information, and the interview became heated.
Trying to do that. Calm down, because I'm telling you. You're absolutely right, though, and I don't really fucking. So far, this is where you're at. I've got at least 2 times you've lied to us in this investigation. You've lied twice in here today. Correct? Say yes. About the anything. You lied at least twice in here today. Okay. Yes. Yes. Don't get smart with me. Well, I'm not. Okay, because I'm here. Listen, I'm the third day burning a candle trying to find your son. Yes. Okay, when you were sleeping, my ass was here. Okay?
Lonna had previously told officers that she met Ebron while working as a dancer at Wacko's. He visited the club regularly and was one of the primary sources for herself and the other dancers to buy drugs. They began a romantic relationship, but bonded over their use of drugs. Police started to focus on her initial reaction to the news about Lonzie's disappearance that night. According to officers who had been searching for Lonzie that Friday, Lonna was interviewed while on her way home. During the questioning process, she denied knowing who Ebron was and had no idea about the incident. When confronted with the responses that she gave during the street interview, Lonna alleged that she did not fully grasp the description of the child given to her by the officer.
An abducted child in a stolen car. I pulled up here because I didn't know if this is the car or not. I know it isn't, but I'm looking for an orange Honda Civic and a black male. It was the one report. Do you know anything about that then? Then I'm telling him yes. No, you said no. He asked your boyfriend, you have a black boyfriend, and does he have an orange Honda? Honestly, I wanted to get there and check things out, make sure that I was telling him that. Right, and that's the first little thing I knew. That's the first little thing that I wanted to see. What was exactly. Christina said exactly that. Before I, Right. Before I told them something was wrong or right or whatever, I wanted to see if it was my kid that was missing, if it was Ruben or not. I tell them that was my situation if it wasn't. Right. So that's the truth. Now. That's the truth. Okay. Right. That's what Christina said. You told her, hey, because she was upset that you lied because she knew, right? Tell me where I'm wrong. She was kind of upset, like, hey, why are you doing this, and you said, I want to see what's going on before I talk with them or something to that effect. Or I want to talk with Ruben, I wanted to make sure that it was actually my kid, not Danny's, or someone else, that had come over, because like I said, we do babysit other people's children. Right. I wanted to make sure it was my kid for sure. That was. Well, he told you Ebron. Yeah, but. You didn't know if it was going to be Lexi or... Exactly. I didn't know if it was my kid. Is that what you're saying? Yes, I didn't know if it was my kid in the car or not. I just wanted to double check. I wanted to get there and Lexi's not a white male child. Well, I would call her White male child with a black boyfriend.
I'm saying
Ebron.
No.
You knew he was talking about yours.
I just wanted to make sure it wasn't set in. It's like
that was set in stone. Hold on, it was set in stone. It was set in stone. That's what I don't. That's then this is the first. This is the first big hurdle we're getting to.
She had told the officer in a prior interview that she believed Lonzy may have crept into the bedroom and overdosed on Ebron's stash of drugs, and that it was possible Ebron was just covering up his actions.
He wasn't watching him well and something happened to him. And I think maybe he got a hold of something, out of his drawer or off the dresser or out of the floor somewhere, or something, and maybe, accidentally overdosed or something like that, and he freaked out and he come up with something quick to, make it look like something else.
In the third interview, she told the same officers that the story about Lonzy's overdose became a rumor around the area.
I think that he wasn't watching him properly. And I think that he either
Say it.
Honest opinion is he probably either drowned in the bathtub or he wasn't watching him in our room and he got a hold of something he probably shouldn't have.
Right.
Those are the only two logical things that I can think of.
You're right.
Like I told you, I've been telling you from the beginning, I feel like something happened at my house, that my baby was already hurt before they come and got me. Did I not tell you that several times?
Lonna also admitted that Ebron had called her that Friday morning and told her to find her own way home after work. She then confessed that she and Ebron had gotten into a heated argument before she left for work that evening. This was over a bruise she found behind Lonzy's ear. Lonna also pointed out that Lonzy had been lethargic the entire day, and a yellow substance had been oozing from his ear before she started her shift. This confession did not make the police feel sorry for Lonna. Instead, they questioned her responsibility as a mother, especially since she was fully aware of Ebron's past and violent nature. On August 18th, Lonna was also charged for child neglect and giving false information to officers during an investigation. Lonna was detained at the county jail, but was released on a surety bond of $50,000 6 days later. However, Ebron remained behind bars after investigators discovered he had smuggled in contraband and had attempted to make an escape during a court appearance through information supplied by another inmate. A court judge ultimately ruled that Ebron couldn't have contacted anyone regarding the case, either directly or indirectly. This came after prosecutors got hold of recorded conversations between Ebron and his ex-girlfriend. He was allowed to speak with his parents, while under supervision of his lawyers, to prevent him from passing messages given his previous attempts at escaping. In the end, the judge ruled that Ebron was allowed no visitors, but as Ebron stewed in prison, Lonna prepared for a custody case for Lily. However, she was about to dig herself a deeper hole. Soon after her release on bond, Lonna reconciled with her estranged husband, Christopher. The two had planned on making some quick cash from a sale of drugs. After appearing for a custody hearing with regards to their daughter Lily's welfare, both Lonna and Christopher made their way back to a Bakers County motel. Their plan was to sell a synthetic drug called Molly, but unbeknownst to them, the entire transaction was being recorded. The couple were arrested and charged with multiple drug offenses. Christopher was given a 3-year sentence, while Lonna received a higher sentence of 7 years. Both Lonna and Christopher lost custody of their daughter Lily. Lonna was dealt a further blow. She had also lost custody of her older daughter, whom she had when she was a teenager. Both Lily and her older sister were taken in by their maternal grandmother. Following the constant run-ins with the law, Lonna's face started to appear frequently in the media. Her unruly behavior and reckless lifestyle led many to question the identity of Lonzy's biological father. Christopher was adamant that Lonzy was his son, but in order to prove critics wrong, he decided to take a DNA test. In December of 2015, the DNA results proved that Christopher was not Lonzi's biological father. Although slowed down, the search for Lonzi continued. On October 17th of 2015, a vigil was held for Lonzi by the community members who came out to support the search for the child. It would have been his second birthday. In January of 2016, 6 months since Lonzi's disappearance, and police were still waiting on Ebron to give them answers. In the meantime, Lonna pleaded guilty to 1 count each of child neglect and falsifying information. She agreed to testify against Ebron so that her sentence could be reduced to 5 years, although she would serve 12 years in prison. However, on January 11th, the case on Lonzi Barton was about to take a very twisted turn. Fearing that Lonna was going to pin all the blame on him, Ebron told investigators he was willing to lead them to Lonzi's remains. It was a bittersweet moment for police, as they finally got to bring closure to those who had been searching for Lonzi. Ebron led police to an area off Snyder Street, near the Phillips Highway in Florida. Under some tires, a black bin bag was discovered and what appeared to be the remains of Lonzi Barton.
We are here today to tell you that we strongly believe that we have found the remains of Lonzi Barton in a wooded area nearby here.
Ebron agreed to confess to police about what really happened to Lonzi. He explained that he and Lonna had put Lonzi into the tub to have a bath. The two of them then began fooling around and had completely forgotten about the child in the tub. After they were done, Lonna went to check up on Lonzi and discovered he had drowned in the water. In a state of panic, both he and Lonna agreed to cover up Lonzi's death by burying his body in a remote location and staging a carjacking. They have planned the whole scenario that Lonna would go to work as normal, and he would stay home and create their false lead in order to throw off investigators. Lonna, however, remained adamant that she had nothing to do with Lonzi's death, and that he had overdosed on drugs being kept by Ebron. The search for Lonzi had come to a tragic end.
Moments ago, the sheriff's office announced that they strongly believe they have found the remains of Lonzi Barton after a nearly 6-month-long search for the toddler.
He was born just 2 years ago, on October 17, 2013, and couldn't survive to see his second birthday. The youngest child of Lonna would forever remain a baby in the hearts and minds of his grandmother and 2 older sisters. The identity of his biological father remains a mystery. Although shocked by the tragedy, investigators still needed to determine his cause of death. The skeletal remains of Lonzi were examined to determine the possible cause of death. However, there was no way to determine if he had drowned or had suffered from an accidental drug overdose. Lonzi's death was ruled as inconclusive. However, the medical examiner confirmed that there were 8 blunt force trauma fractures located along his ribcage and 2 blunt force skull fractures that possibly occurred near the time of his death. Lonzi was laid to rest on April 5, 2016, at the Turner Cemetery in Glen St. Mary's, Florida. Both Lonna and Christopher's defense teams had requested that both parents be allowed to attend the funeral of their child. After the funeral, they were both sent off to serve out their respective sentences in prison.
A final resting place for Lonzi Barton. The toddler was buried in a private ceremony in northern Baker County yesterday afternoon. This is a picture of his grave site. His remains were found in Bayard back in January, 6 months after he was reported missing. His mother's boyfriend, Reuben Ebron, is serving 20 years in prison for the child's death.
Ebron agreed to the plea deal he made with the prosecutors, and thereafter led investigators to the remains of Lonzi Barton. He was just 21 months old when he lost his life. Ebron was charged with aggravated manslaughter. At his trial in January of 2016, Ebron's attorney, James Boyle, did not appear shocked with the autopsy report. He pointed out in court that, as per Ebron's statements, Lonzi's autopsy would have shown signs of trauma, as he had been harmed by others. Boyle explained to the court that Ebron had told him and the police investigating the case that Lonzie had returned from Baker's County with visible injuries on his body. Ebron had also told police officers that he had taken pictures of these injuries and explained to them where he had stored them on his phone. The prosecution's case was straightforward. They argued that Ebron was also responsible for some, if not all, of Lonzie's injuries. Ebron had already confessed to child neglect, using drugs in the presence of minors, falsifying information about Lonzie's disappearance, and trying to cover up Lonzie's death through subterfuge. His actions were inexcusable, according to the prosecution. On February 5, 2016, Ebron was sentenced to 20 years in prison, without the possibility of parole. Following the conclusion of the case, Reuben Ebron Sr., Ebron's father, spoke to the media about what he had learned throughout the investigation. He sympathized with the family of Lonzie Barton and for the pain they endured. Reuben added that he was angered by the people who were meant to protect the child, but instead sought to cause him more harm. He also remarked that Lonzie's short time on Earth was surely one of pain, and that he is now in a safer place. Reuben did deny that his son was also at fault for Lonzie's untimely death, but he added that Lonna's punishment should also be reviewed someday. Today's case is another of those painful cases that led to the death of a child. It is a topic we constantly find ourselves debating as a society. Should some people be allowed to raise children? So today we ask you your opinion on the case of Lonzie Barton. Did Lonna Lauramore Barton receive a rightful sentence? Do you believe that Lonna and Ebron were ever speaking the truth? And why is it always too late in cases such as today's? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Say love you.
On April 27, 2016, Tricia Todd didn't do her usual routine of picking up her daughter Faith from the babysitter before heading to work. She also didn't show up at her workplace that day. Concerned, people began calling each other to find out where Tricia was. One of these calls reached her family, who became immediately worried about her whereabouts. Without waiting for her to return on her own, they decided to go to her house and check on her themselves. When they arrived, Tricia's car was not in the driveway. Soon they would discover that it wasn't just her car that was gone. Tricia was missing too.
We didn't have any idea where she was. Nobody had heard from her. Nobody had seen her. There was no activity on any of her bank accounts or credit cards or cell phone.
Inside the house, the lights were on and the groceries were placed out, so it appeared as if she had just returned from shopping and had gone out to run an extra errand. That could explain why her car was not there either. But what could have been so urgent that she had not picked up Faith? And why would she not inform anyone? As they were freaking out while searching for her and thinking of various places she would have gone, they saw something right outside her house and across the street. It was her car. They had been so worried about finding Tricia that her car went unnoticed initially. The placement was odd because it wasn't where she usually parked it. Something was definitely off, and her family knew that they needed to report it to the police now. Tricia was then reported missing. People started coming up with theories such as she might have run away, or she might have just been out for a few minutes and will be right back. The first mystery to be solved turned out to be the placement of the car. The police knew that her car could reveal the first set of clues right away. When they looked inside the car, they found Tricia's purse and the keys still in the ignition. If anyone even vaguely thought that Tricia had run away, they were proven wrong right away. Where could she have been? In the modern days, CCTV cameras provided half the answers. The police saw Tricia took her car to a Publix grocery store. She bought the same items that were found in her house. Then she came back home. That was the last time Tricia was seen. Before they could find more answers, they were notified of another mystery. Tricia and Faith were supposed to spend time with someone on the evening of April 26th. Tricia was not supposed to drop Faith at the babysitter's place. Then how did Faith end up being there? Obviously, only the babysitter could answer these questions. Following an interrogation with the babysitter, the officers got to know that it was in fact Faith's father and Tricia's ex-husband, Steve Williams, who had brought Faith there. Born on February 19, 1986, in Stewart, Martin County, Florida, Patricia Gail Todd was the daughter of David Joseph Todd and Rebecca Jane Todd. Everyone called her Tricia. In 2004, she graduated from South Fork High School and went on to serve her country in the U.S. Air Force. Since childhood, Tricia had a friend named Stephen. They had known each other for years, and now coincidentally, Stephen was also in the Air Force. They stayed in constant touch, even when she was deployed to Kuwait and Iraq during her military service. Neither Tricia nor Stephen noticed when their friendship turned into something more special. Soon enough, they started dating. Their romantic life picked up pace and they tied the knot. What could have been better than marrying your childhood friend? Tricia was pregnant with Stephen's baby. When their little girl was born, the Williams couple named her Faith. But as we already know, real life is not a fairy tale, and not every story has a happy ending. After spending more than a decade together, Stephen and Tricia started facing marital problems. It got worse to handle, and after 11 years of togetherness, they decided to part their ways. Even after parting ways, they remained on good terms. After their divorce, Tricia quit the Air Force and moved to Hobe Sound, Florida with Faith. Even though Faith lived with her mother, she was allowed to spend enough time with her father Stephen whenever he could visit, considering his job. Tricia, who was a devout Christian, had always been compassionate. Her desire to help others became an urge, and she decided to become a registered nurse. To accomplish her dream, she first received her nursing degree from Central Carolina Tech College, and then joined Treasury Coast Hospice as a hospice nurse. But her inspiring little story was about to turn tragic. During the last week of April 2016, Stephen had driven down from his base in North Carolina to come and meet Faith. He had booked an Airbnb in the city for a couple of days. While more questions arose surrounding Stephen, one of Tricia's neighbors came forward to inform the police that Tricia had driven away in her car later that evening, on April 26th. When police traced her phone, they found that Tricia had been to an Airbnb. There was no doubt that Stephen was the next to be questioned. He acknowledged that Tricia had been with him and baby Faith, but after some time she had left with the promise that she would pick up Faith the next morning. When she didn't show up, Stephen took his daughter to the babysitter's place because he had to go to work. He didn't know where Tricia would go, but having known her for several years, he told the police that she was a religious person and sometimes she liked to go out on the beach to walk alone and connect with God. Those who knew Tricia closely corroborated the story. Police now had a lead. They knew that several things could have gone wrong if she was alone that night, but they needed to figure out what exactly had happened. Soon enough, they found one man with whom she had a conversation while at the beach. Once again, CCTV cameras played a crucial role in the investigation. They captured footage of a man on the beach, where he was observed watching turtles laying eggs. However, there was no sign of Tricia in the vicinity. As a result, he was quickly cleared of any suspicion. Time was passing, but no leads were available. At this point, only Tricia had all the answers, and surprisingly, it would be Tricia herself who would end up solving the mystery of her case. She had been keeping a journal for a long time, along with her feelings and emotions that had some dark secrets. The revelation showed that Stephen wasn't who people thought he was. He had been abusive towards Tricia, even going as far as kicking her in the belly while she was pregnant. Those who had seen them as childhood friends before they became a couple were deeply shocked. They had no idea that Tricia had been facing such struggles behind the scenes. Stephen was someone that Tricia feared. Stephen's mother gave a statement against her own son to reveal yet another important angle.
He hated Tricia. He had said that he wished Tricia would disappear. I said, did you have anything to do with it? He said, no, I have nothing to do with that. I don't believe Stephen.
Stephen did not love Tricia. In fact, he hated her. The hatred was so strong that he hated everything that Tricia loved. He had strangled and killed 2 of Tricia's dogs. After killing what she loved, he wanted her gone, disappeared. Now that Tricia had disappeared, there seemed to be no doubt that Stephen had a hand in that. When Stephen was approached once again, he had the same story to tell. He did not know anything about Tricia's disappearance. But for the 3rd time, CCTV footage disclosed a crucial link in the case. Even though Stephen denied, he was very clearly seen driving his car and also Tricia's car the night she went missing. He told the law enforcement officers that he had been in her car to get some gas for her as it had been running low. But the inconsistency here was more than apparent. Tricia's gas tank was almost empty when the police found it that morning. Adding to the concern, he was spotted near Tricia's house that night. Even if there was a small chance he hadn't committed a crime that night, it was clear his initial story wasn't true either. He was arrested on May 24, 2016. Consistent questioning and evidence made his stories evolve further. This time, he did not know about her disappearance because she was dead. He said he visited Tricia's house to get her laptop on her request, but then when he returned back to his Airbnb room, Tricia was lying on the floor, almost dead. Stephen freaked out and thought Tricia was pulling some grand scheme to frame him. He panicked and took Tricia in her car. He kept on driving and stopped at a random location where he laid Tricia's body and crossed her arms. But why did he take her to that secluded location instead of taking her to the hospital? His claim that she wasn't really dead and that he placed her phone beside her just in case she needed to call someone seemed like a poorly constructed story. It lacked credibility to make it believable. More questioning followed, but Stephen's answers were ever evolving. Detective Yesenia Cardi had been interrogating him for some time now, and she knew how far Stephen could go with his lies.
Stephen, I know you're tired, and I'm tired too. And I told you I tried to be able to paint this picture of you and to keep you. Because now she's without both her mom and her dad. You know, and if things happen the way you said it happened, which I told you, I understood everything you were saying yesterday. It took a long time to get it out of you and to try to understand. But if things happen the way you said it did, then there's really no reason why you shouldn't just take us to her. You know what I'm saying? That way we can prove, okay, or if there's no other injuries or anything on her, we can say, okay, well, it must have happened the way he said it did. And he just did a bonehead move and freaking brought her out here instead of calling 911 or taking her to a hospital. That's a misdemeanor compared to a freaking homicide charge. You know what I mean? Yes. So if things happen the way you said it did, I don't see why you're just not taking her to us, taking us to her. You know what I mean?
Stephen said he did not know where he disposed of Tricia because he was driving in a daze of panic. According to him, He did not know where he finally stopped the car.
I don't have a clue where that is.
But you made it there, you made it back, you were thinking straight enough to change your clothes, or
got rid of the clothes I already had anyway.
Exactly. So you were thinking straight enough, and then
I didn't want anything else to do with her and the
you were
crazy.
thinking straight enough to go back and clean up. You were thinking straight enough to send that BS text the next morning just to cover your steps.
It's the next morning. That's after the
I know, but you told me, you had already told me you hadn't slept all night.
Just laid there.
The only reason you would not take us to a body is because she didn't die the way you're explaining.
But she did, and I can't tell you where that is, and I don't know where that is. I don't have any recollection of where that place is located.
Stephen, you can. The only reason you're not is because she didn't die the way you're saying.
She did. And that's why I freaked out so much, because she did. Everything like that happened, and I freaked out because I'm trying to figure out why this is even happening. I've been good to her. I've been nice to her. I've given her space. I've let her say whatever she wants to say.
So you're thinking she did this on purpose?
I figured like it was a setup of some sort because she's set me up before in the past, and I'm thinking like, okay, so this is like some ultimate in-game kind of thing. I don't even know what you're trying to do at this point, and I don't know why you're trying to do it at this point. But once again, I can't pinpoint where she is.
No matter how straightforwardly Detective Cardet dismissed his lies and denials, Stephen did not budge from his false narrative. That's when Detective Tom took charge.
Come on in.
Thank you.
Please.
Tom Backall.
Hi.
Oh, we haven't met yet. What's your name?
Stephen Williams.
Stephen, with a P or a V? V? Okay. I just got a couple questions. I've had an opportunity to listen to some of your statements to Jesse today. I haven't been involved from the very beginning, and there's just a couple of things in my mind I need to clear up. So if you don't mind answering a couple of questions, I'd appreciate it. Do you mind talking to me?
Sure.
Okay. And you've been very cooperative, and I understand you. So the only thing I heard you and Jesse talking about as I just got here was obviously the night that your ex-wife disappeared, but there was something that you had mentioned about kind of referring to drama, or her being dramatic. Can you kind of expound on that for me? Because I'm not quite sure I follow what you meant, that she talked a lot and was kind of dramatic. Tell me what you mean by that.
She's always overly dramatic in her storytelling. Everything's bigger than what it really was. Everything was more exciting than it really was. But that's just how she is. That's how she likes to embellish her stories.
It's a redhead.
And I'm like, that's fine. I don't care. Once again, we're divorced. I have my own life. You have your own life. If you want to embellish your stories now, embellish them. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care.
Right.
You know, it just...
How long were you guys married?
Almost 11 years.
Detective Tom brought with him an empathetic approach. His questions were open-ended and demanded detailed answers without making it an obligation. That seemed to work so far.
Most of the time in your relationship, when things got difficult or heated, it always had something to do with money. I think you and I have been talking for 10 minutes. Money's come up 4 or 5 times, and that always happens in divorce situations.
It was one of the
that,
many issues
yeah.
That we argued about. Just it was always a circle of things, same arguments. It just got to the point where there were no safe topics in the home, and I just decided I was done. I don't want to live like this. I don't want to live in a miserable home where every time I open my mouth we're arguing, and it didn't seem to matter about what it was, you know. And I just grew up in a happy home with one parent than to grow up in a miserable home with 2 parents where they fight and yell all the time.
In these period of years after the separation, arguments, once you all aren't living together anymore, I understand once you're in a relationship that doesn't work, there's no fixing it, and I get, you know, what you're saying there. But in terms of disputes or disagreements you all would have post separation, did you find that they were always or primarily about money?
No, the only thing we really argued about was it upset me that she didn't prioritize that. In her mind, it was more, but if I don't, then sorry for you. And I'm like, All I'm asking for is 10 to 15 minutes, Monday through Friday. That's it. And if you need to move the time, let me know. If you know you're not going to be there at 5, don't wait till 5:50 something to tell me you're not going to come online. Tell me at 3. Tell me at noon. Just tell me, hey, today's not a good day even. Can we try again tomorrow? Fine. I'm very flexible that way.
Don't string me along.
But yeah, I'll tell her like, hey, I'm online, and then she'll be like, oh, 10 minutes. Okay, I'll wait 10 minutes. 30 minutes will go by. Oh, I'll be on in 5. Another 20 minutes will go by. Okay, try again tomorrow.
In a deft investigative move, the detective skillfully extracted a comprehensive response, delving into the critical dimensions of the case. Money and the custody of their daughter. Money, a powerful motivator, could stir emotions and unveil hidden evilness in anyone. And custody was an aspect that carried the weight of fractured relationships. As the detective navigated the conversation, the responses became more than just pieces of information. They transformed into glimpses, showing the emotional landscape surrounding the crime.
At a minimum, unconscious or lifeless body, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What are you doing?
I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what to do.
These are the big things.
In my head is this all is a terrible situation for me now.
Here, let's role play, okay? Mr. Backetall, I pulled down the dusty road and I sat there. It could have been hours, and I just thought, what the hell am I going to do? What the hell am I going to do? Or, Mr. Backetall, I drove around for a long time. Yeah, we know it couldn't be that because you'd have run out of gas. Or, Mr. Backetall, I parked on that dirt road and I walked up and down the road, pacing, because I've got this situation that I can't explain going on in the back of my... Right. What are you doing? What are you doing for 2 hours?
Now, when the female detective left the room, another detective started an hour-long monologue in which he covered every bit of information that could make Stephen feel comfortable enough to share the true story.
You remember talking to me earlier?
Yes.
I'm Dan. Listen, you want some water or anything? You doing all right?
I'm all right.
You don't want anything?
Just water.
You do want some water?
Yes, please.
Okay, let me get you something right there. She's pushing your buttons up against the wall with this key thing, and she gets you in trouble. Then next thing I saw that she's talking to your commanding officer's wife or something about you being with this girlfriend. I saw all this stuff. She's always pushing your buttons. She's always
just trying to do the right thing.
And you are trying to do the right thing.
Try to be a good person.
And then here it is. You're trying to be a good person.
And it's still not working.
And she comes in, and here she comes. I have a kid, okay? That is a stressful thing to have to deal with a kid in the middle of the night who wants their mommy, and they will not take no for an answer.
You would have.
That's stressful.
And I just felt like, who am I to deny you your button?
That would push anybody's buttons. That would get anybody on edge. Trust me, I've been there. Sometimes my kids start screaming, "I want my mommy! I want my mommy!"
And
it's like
upset with my daughter.
Oh no!
I just said
I don't get upset. I don't get upset with it. Honestly, it makes me feel a little upset at myself because why am I not good enough for my own daughter? You know?
I'm not there.
I know you think that the truth is gonna make it look so much worse. Okay, but I can tell you right now, the truth is never anywhere near as bad as what people will believe if you let them come up with their own story.
Everyone believes I hated her. I never hated her. I didn't.
So tell me. Tell me that story. Tell me what happened.
He was wrong. The truth was so much more shocking than what anyone could have imagined. Then finally, Stephen cracked and told the detectives that Tricia started arguing with him for child support money. That argument quickly turned more confrontational, and Tricia proceeded to get in his way.
I can't even leave the house now. You know, I don't want to push you. I don't want to touch you. I don't want anything with you because I'm just thinking about flashbacks of before when you just blew all this shit up for no reason, and then now I'm getting arrested, but only after the fact did you go and, say that it wasn't my fault. No one else knows that now, but only after the fact that I got arrested. All I'm thinking just flashbacks. I go to push her away, and then she gets really pissed about that. And then she gets even more aggressive and in my face and pushing me back. And I'm like, would you please just stop? It wasn't my freaking fault. I wasn't. And then all I'm thinking is, great, now I've pushed her and she's hurt her head and I'm done. Everything I've tried to do, everything I've tried to be is done because I made a mistake. I didn't really even lose my cool. I just tried to move you away. I just didn't watch it first.
Sorry.
I just tried to de-escalate the situation because I couldn't get out. I didn't know where to go. I couldn't even just leave. Like, all I wanted to do was just leave. I just wanted nothing to do with that.
Do you know what she hit her head on? Was it the floor or?
I don't know. She just fell, and then she wasn't responsive after that, and I didn't know what the hell to do.
So here it was, a confession. But was that true? Not by a long shot.
You do know where she's at. The only reason that you would not take us to her is if something else happened at that house, and you're not telling me. She will be found. She will be found.
I figured by now she already would have been found.
Okay, then take us to where she would have been found. Where did you take her to?
I don't know.
Stephen, you do know.
I don't know. It was just dark and the road was dusty.
Do you love your daughter?
Of course I do. Of course I do.
Okay. You need to give her mother back to her.
But I can't.
Okay. I told you she's going to need some type of stability.
I have no
and you're all she's got.
I don't even know
you
where
are the only living parent that she has left. Show your daughter right that you took us to her mother. You need to show her right. She's going to grow up saying, my dad did something to my mom, and he left her out. He left my mom out to get eaten by animals.
No idea.
Is that what you want your daughter to grow up thinking? Knowing?
Not.
Then take me to her.
Stephen's intense hatred towards Tricia, his childhood friend, his lover, and wife of 11 years was so deep that he showed no remorse for killing her. He eventually agreed to lead the police to where he had disposed of her body, not out of a change of heart, but because he had already confessed to her murder in a second account. The police needed to locate Tricia's body, and this prompted him to confess. His decision was influenced by a deal offered by detectives. In exchange for leading them to her body, he would face a lesser charge of second-degree murder, carrying a 35-year sentence. Stephen accepted the plea deal, leading investigators to the John C. and Mariana Jones Hungryland Wildlife and Environmental Area in Martin and Palm Beach counties, where they discovered Tricia's remains in a container.
So where you place the flag is where? Okay. And about how far down are we going?
It's not much off the surface, 2.5 feet.
Okay. It's about 2.5 feet down.
Here, what Stephen failed to confess in his interrogation, but later admitted after the detectives encouraged him. So Tricia had recently celebrated her 30th birthday on February 19, 2016, and Stephen had decided that her death day was going to be April 26th, just 2 months later. In fact, the reason for his visit to Hobe Sound was not to meet Faith, but to kill Tricia. When Tricia dropped off Faith with Stephen, he could not muster up enough courage to make the move. But when she left, he knew that it was now or never. So he called her back. When she returned, he knocked her unconscious. But she was not dead yet, just merely unconscious. Stephen was waiting for her to regain consciousness to demand her email password. He had a plan to send emails to everyone and say that she was leaving everyone and everything for good. But when Tricia did wake up, things didn't go as swimmingly as he had hoped. Tricia started screaming. Now Stephen had his frustration and anger building up, and that was coupled with his anxiety of the current moment, in case anyone had heard them. So he wanted to end everything right there, He decided he would punch her so hard that she would die. You could imagine the level of hate and evilness inside him. Sure enough, Tricia was dead. All this happened while their 2-year-old daughter was sleeping in the next room. Then he put Tricia's body in a trash bag and decided to drive her to Hungryland Wildlife Reserve, where he had already dug up a hole. He planned on using Tricia's car, but it did not have gas in it. Not changing his plan, he went to get some gas. It was a rookie move. He had been captured in multiple CCTV cameras driving Tricia's car. He had been very thorough with his plan and had bought a chainsaw in North Carolina to remove Tricia's teeth and fingerprints. He wanted to get rid of everything that could lead to the identification of her body, in case the body was found. So he dismembered her and tried dissolving those parts in a tub full of acid. All this while Tricia's family was waiting. They knew Tricia would never come back to them, but they did not want to accept it. Not until they knew what had happened to her. But when they did get the word about Tricia's last moments, they were shattered. The worst part about it was that Stephen killed Tricia for full custody of Faith, but he had not even been caring towards his daughter. He just wanted to take her away from Tricia. Stephen said that he was sick of Tricia disrespecting him and asking for money to care for Faith. The only way he could get away from all of it was by killing her. Tricia's family, who could hardly comprehend what had happened, said they will miss her vibrant love of life, her servant's heart, and her beautiful smile. Since she was a religious person, her family focused on that. They believed Tricia's life was a testimony of God's grace and mercy. On September 30th, 2016, Circuit Judge Lawrence Merman decided to proceed with Stephen's hearing after he was considered fit to continue. The judge found him guilty for second-degree murder and child neglect, and sentenced him for 35 years, according to a plea deal. He had already spent 130 days in Martin County Prison. The state prosecution asked for more than $67,000 to be paid to the Martin County Sheriff's Office to cover the cost of the investigation. Tricia's goodness shone through her entire family. When the sentencing came, Tricia's dad, David Todd, shared memories of his daughter. Surprisingly, he wished the best for Stephen Williams, the person who had caused them so much pain. David hoped Stephen could change, find happiness through faith, and make the most of educational opportunities in prison. Not just that, he went ahead and embraced Jack Williams Jr., Stephen's dad, expressing sorrow for the difficulties his son had faced. Even after Stephen committed a merciless act against Tricia, her family demonstrated incredible kindness and forgiveness. Tricia Todd, a beloved soul, found her final resting place at the South Florida National Cemetery in Lake Worth. Her father crafted a small memorial at Beacon Baptist Church in Jupiter, a place he visited faithfully every week. In this sacred space, memories of Tricia are still kept alive. The Todd family, anchored by their profound faith, did not focus on the fact that Tricia was gone. Instead, they cherished the 30 precious years they had with her. In the aftermath of losing Tricia, the family found comfort in raising their granddaughter Faith, a name that carried the weight of miracles. That night she lost both her parents, one to a heinous act of violence, and the other to the confines of a prison cell. She was sent to stay with Tricia's brother Jonathan Todd and his wife. Given the context, what alternatives do you think could Stephen have chosen instead of committing the crime? How might the criminal justice system address cases like this to ensure a balance between accountability and rehabilitation? Please let us know your thoughts. On a Monday morning, June 13, 1983, the Houston Police Department arrived at an apartment in northeast Houston, Texas, after receiving a frantic phone call from Gregory Scott Traver. Inside, they discovered the bodies of a man and a woman. They had been savagely attacked and killed by someone using a pickaxe. Investigators were puzzled by the extreme violence of the attack, as they initially believed it was a robbery gone wrong. As the investigation dug deeper into the victim's background, it revealed interesting details that changed the direction of the case. The more the investigation deepened, it led to someone who had an intense grudge against one of the victims, Karlya Faye Tucker. Who was Karlya Faye Tucker? And what was her role in the double murder?
Courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have reviewed the legal issues in this case, and therefore I will not grant a 30-day stay. May God bless Karlya Faye Tucker, and God bless her victims and their families.
On Monday morning, June 13, 1983, Gregory Scott Traver was waiting for his friend Jerry Lynn Dean to pick him up for work. However, Jerry never arrived. The two of them had been contracted to install an alarm system that day. Gregory knew Jerry was not someone who skipped out on work without a good reason. Since they lived close by, Gregory decided to walk to Jerry's place, thinking his friend might have overslept. When Gregory arrived at Jerry's apartment, he found the front door was slightly open. He pushed the door open and called out for Jerry. There was no response. Gregory then noticed that the TV and stereo were stacked together, and the Harley-Davidson that Jerry had been driving on was missing. He began checking each room as he searched for Jerry, but there was no sign of him. Gregory eventually opened the door to the spare bedroom. He was not prepared for what he discovered there. Inside the room, he found his friend Jerry on the floor next to the bed. Jerry's body lay in a pool of blood. On the other side of the bed was a woman laying unconscious with a pickaxe jutting out of her chest. He didn't recognize the woman. Gregory was shocked by the scene before him. He ran out of the apartment and back to his house. Then he immediately called the Houston police to report what he had found in Jerry's apartment. When police arrived at the apartment, they took notice of the chaotic scene before them. They found tools, motorcycle parts, and dirty clothes littering the floor. In the spare bedroom, they found Jerry's body along with the unknown woman. The scene was gruesome and showed the violent manner in which both victims were killed. It was obvious that the murder weapon was the pickaxe. One of the officers removed the axe from the victim's chest and filed it away as evidence. Both bodies were removed and transported to the Harris County Medical Examiner's office for autopsies. Investigators interviewed Gregory about what he found at Jerry's apartment. He informed them that the door had been left open, and the apartment appeared to be messed up. Gregory also told investigators that Jerry's Harley-Davidson and blue Chevrolet El Camino pickup truck were missing. A search of the apartment revealed that both victims' wallets were also missing, and that a ball-peen hammer from Jerry's own toolbox was also used during the attack. Investigators believed the murders were likely caused by a robbery that didn't go as planned. They noted that there was no forced entry into the apartment. Neighbors were being questioned, and many of them informed the police that they heard loud noises coming from the apartment in the early hours of the morning. Many said that they didn't call the police because they had not heard any screaming or gunshots and assumed nothing violent had happened. Investigators concluded that whoever attacked and killed Jerry and his female companion were either let into the apartment by the victims or the door was left unlocked. However, investigators were troubled by the fact of the murders, suggesting it was a deliberate and vicious attack. The autopsy reports revealed that Jerry had been stabbed 20 times with the pickaxe. He also suffered a blunt force injury to the back of his skull. The woman had been stabbed 15 times with the final blow directly to her heart. Through fingerprints taken during the autopsy, they were able to identify the woman as 32-year-old Deborah Ruth Thornton. Now that the investigators had the identities of their victims, they needed to take a closer look at their backgrounds. Based on what investigators observed at the crime scene, they realized the killings were excessively violent. They didn't think the perpetrators were ordinary robbers. The murder seemed too personal to dismiss as random. Investigators started by interviewing people close to Jerry. They had learned that Jerry met Deborah just the night before at a pool party. Other than that fateful meeting, neither victim knew each other personally. Jerry's friends who attended the party on Sunday evening told investigators that they found out that Deborah had come to the party to blow off some steam. Investigators also learned that Deborah was married and had 2 children. Naturally, their initial suspect was Deborah's husband, Richard Thornton. When police questioned Richard, he informed them that he was at home with Deborah's children on the evening of Sunday, June 12, 1983. He confessed to having an argument with Deborah that Sunday and told investigators that he asked her to leave the house and she did not return that night. Richard explained that he and Deborah had been experiencing marital issues for some time. However, he told them that he loved his wife and would not hurt her in any way. Richard told investigators that he was not aware that Deborah was cheating on him, and it was the first time he had heard about Jerry. Investigators eliminated Richard as a suspect after his alibi checked out, but they learned about another family member of Deborah's who might have had a grudge, her father, William List. Investigators looked into William's background. They discovered that he was once convicted of assaulting young boys and had served out his sentence. He was now a wealthy business owner in Texas, but was under investigation for tax evasion. Further investigation into the case revealed that Deborah had been summoned to testify against William. Investigators suspected that William might have had a strong motive to silence Deborah. William was questioned regarding the double murder, but denied having any involvement. Investigators continued to look into William as the weeks went by, but they never found any solid evidence that could link him to the murder. Meanwhile, another team of investigators were digging into Jerry's past as well. They soon discovered that Jerry also had his fair share of bad blood. Jerry Lynn Dean was a respected mechanic in Houston. As investigators interviewed people who knew Jerry and sought information about his life, one name came up frequently: Karlya Faye Tucker. Karlya, age 23, was known for her social life and was best friends with Jerry's ex-wife, Shawn Dean. Upon further questioning of Jerry's acquaintances, investigators learned that Karlya and Jerry had a rough relationship from the beginning. Their conflict started a year ago, when Karlya's roommate and best friend Shawn began dating Jerry Dean. Karlya and Jerry clashed right from the start. Karlya thought Jerry was not a good match for Shawn and found him weak. The tension began when Karlya discovered Jerry's Harley-Davidson motorcycle parked in the middle of her apartment's living room, leaking oil onto the carpet. That night, Karlya angrily chased Jerry out of the apartment. Over the next few months, the tension between Karlya and Jerry escalated further. When Karlya and Shawn planned a road trip to see their favorite bands, Jerry became jealous. He found a photo album belonging to Shawn and Karlya and began stabbing every picture of Karlya, including the only one she had with her mother. This enraged Karlya, and she vowed to teach Jerry a lesson. She tried hard to get Shawn to end the relationship with Jerry, but instead, the couple moved in together. Shawn and Jerry got married in February of 1983, but Karlya was still convinced that Jerry was the wrong choice for Shawn. A month after their wedding, Shawn had stopped by Karlya's new house to pick up her jackets. Although the two women remained friends, Karlya told Shawn she never wanted to see Jerry again. When Karlya heard that Jerry was parked outside, she flew into a rage and stormed out of the house. Karlya allegedly punched Jerry in the face and broke his glasses. Jerry had to be taken to the hospital after getting injured from broken glass, which affected his eyes. Investigators discovered that Shawn and Jerry divorced in June of 1983 due to allegations of abuse and lifestyle differences. In an act of revenge for the alleged physical abuse she endured from Jerry's actions, Shawn had stolen Jerry's bank card and withdrew his entire savings of $460 from his account. The two women went on a shopping spree, but Jerry was allegedly plotting his own revenge. Rumors began to spread that Jerry had hired a man for $300 to shoot Karlya in the face with a flare gun. Jerry's plan was to disfigure Karlya for life and when she heard about it, she was furious. The volatile relationship between Karlya and Jerry piqued the interest of investigators, and they were curious to know more about these notorious party girls. Karlya Faye Tucker was born on November 18, 1959, to the family of Larry and Carolyn Tucker. Her life, however, was rough from the very beginning. Her sisters, Kathy and Carrie, who were much older, influenced her into smoking at the age of 8. It was worse when Karlya's parents divorced. At that time, she was 10 years old. It was at this time she learned that she was not Larry Tucker's daughter, but rather the child of one of her mother's extramarital affairs. By the age of 12, Karlya had already started experimenting with drugs and having intimate relations with men. Karlya eventually dropped out of school at age 14 and followed her mother and sisters into prostitution. Her mother Carolyn taught Karlya how to use her body to earn herself some money. It was around this period in her life that her sister started meeting men who were involved with biker clubs. One of those bikers introduced Karlya to the numbing pleasures of heroin. Both mother and daughter often traveled with rock bands, such as the Allman Brothers Band, the Marshall Tucker Band, and the Eagles, as groupies. Karlya became addicted to this new unrestricted lifestyle. When she was 16 years old, Karlya met a handyman named Stephen Griffith. They eventually got married. But domestic life was exhausting for Karlya, as they constantly argued and had intense physical fights. Stephen had told his friends that Karlya could hit harder than any man he knew. After 2 years, the couple decided to end their relationship, and Karlya went back to her risky lifestyle. Her mother Carolyn died when Karlya was 20 years old. By this time, Karlya had once again started hanging around biker clubs. It was during her period of grief she became friends with Sean. The two grew close, but Karlya became jealous when Sean started dating Jerry Dean. Karlya would eventually meet a man named Danny Garrett, who was 35 years old, a local bartender, and friends with Sean and Jerry. The four often partied together and engaged in a very risky lifestyle. Karlya and Jerry, though, could never seem to get along. The police had done their research on Karlya. Investigators called her in for an interview. During questioning, Karlya didn't deny that she and Jerry had been at odds with each other. However, she did deny any involvement in the murders of Jerry and Deborah, and she remained unaffected, showing no remorse. Karlya agreed to have her fingerprints taken. She also agreed to take a polygraph test, but later changed her mind after her boyfriend Danny told her she shouldn't. Karlya's prints were not helpful, as investigators could never find any usable prints from the crime scene or murder weapon. They were suspicious of Karlya and Danny after her sudden withdrawal from the polygraph test, but it was not enough to label them as suspects. Investigators, though, continued to pay Karlya and Danny regular visits to see if either of them would slip and reveal something incriminating. However, Karlya was completely at ease and continued to enjoy her life of partying. Weeks would pass and investigators were still no closer to finding any hard evidence against Danny and Karlya. It was then that a homicide detective named J.C. Mosier took an interest in the case. He had not been assigned to the case, but upon hearing Danny Garrett's name, he grew curious. Mosier had grown up in the same neighborhood as Danny and his family. Mosier was also good friends with Danny's ex-wife. Mosier called Danny's ex-wife and asked her if she had heard anything about Danny's involvement with Karlya and the Houston pickaxe double murder. She told Mosier that she hadn't heard anything from Danny, but would ask around. Mosier's curiosity would pay off. The police department was about to receive their biggest shocking lead in this case. On July 18, 1983, the Houston Police Department received an emergency call. The man on the other end of the line sounded nervous and demanded to speak to Mosier only. When Mosier took the call, he recognized the voice. It was Douglas "Doug" Garrett, Danny Garrett's brother. Doug had information about the pickaxe murder. Mosier listened as Doug revealed two names that had become familiar in the police department: Danny Garrett and Karlya Faye Tucker. Mosier knew they had to act fast. Doug told him that he'd been keeping the secret for the last 5 weeks. He also mentioned a third person named James Liebrandt, a friend who went with the couple to Jerry's house on the night of the murders. Doug told Mosier that the situation was getting worse because Karlya was now discussing killing someone else to cover up the crime. He agreed to meet with investigators at the station and even told them he had another person who could back up his story, Carrie Burrell, Karlya's sister. Doug and Carrie made their way to the police department. They were interviewed separately. In the interview with investigators, Doug told them that Karlya's hatred of Jerry was no secret among their friend group. He went on to explain that at 6:30 a.m. on Monday, June 13, 1983, Danny and Karlya showed up at his house with a blue El Camino pickup truck. It was then that Karlya started boasting about killing Jerry and some unknown woman. Danny backed up her story. Doug was hesitant to assist them, but he eventually agreed. He burned Jerry's wallet in an ashtray and dumped the stolen motorcycle parts in a nearby ditch. In the other interview room, Carrie told investigators that she had moved in with Doug about 2 weeks after the murder. She explained that she had grown terrified of Karlya after the murders and wanted to escape from her. She also continued to inform investigators that Karlya had begun making plans to kill Carrie's ex-husband, Ronnie Burrell. Carrie mentioned that Karlya and Danny's newfound thirst for violence led them to consider eliminating Ronnie because he was someone who knew about the double murder. After 2 hours of speaking, Doug agreed to show investigators where he dumped the motorcycle parts. It was then that Mosier asked Doug to help them catch Karlya and Danny confessing to the murder. Initially, Doug was nervous, but he agreed after realizing the nightmares he was having wouldn't end until justice was done. Investigators were ready to put their plan into action, but they were not prepared for what they were about to get from the suspected murderers. On the afternoon of July 20th, 1983, a transmitter was taped to Doug's chest, and a recorder was placed in his boot. Doug got on his motorcycle and rode to Karlya's house, ready to get their confession on tape. A block away from Karlya's house, Mosier and several investigators were parked and waiting in a van listening in on the conversation. Doug sat down and made some small talk before steering the conversation toward the murder. Karlya and Danny painted a vivid picture of what happened that fateful night. On June 11, 1983, Karlya threw a birthday party for her sister Carrie. The party went on all weekend, with friends arriving, alcohol flowing freely, and drugs being used. There was a lot of noisy and rowdy behavior. Karlya confided in Doug that she was feeling more and more hyper and on edge. She and Danny later explained that on Sunday evening, they, along with their friend James, were the only ones still awake. It was then that Karlya suggested stealing Jerry Dean's prized Harley-Davidson and selling its parts to make some extra money. Karlya mentioned her intense hatred for Jerry and how she had wanted to make him pay for everything he had done to her and Sean. At around 3 a.m. on Monday morning, June 13th, Karlya, Danny, and James made their way to Jerry's apartment. They were able to enter the apartment because Karlya had stolen Sean's set of house keys weeks earlier. Karlya said that at the time she didn't know when she would need them, but they had come in handy that night. It was then that Doug asked them if it was their intention to kill anyone that night, and both Karlya and Danny said it was something that just happened. Karlya explained that she didn't know what she was doing or thinking. She just wanted to hurt Jerry. At first, they went looking for things to steal. Karlya and Danny then opened the spare bedroom door and found Jerry asleep. Karlya sat on Jerry and tried to pin him down. When Jerry woke up and grabbed her by the arms to move her off, Danny picked up Jerry's ball-peen hammer and hit him behind the head. Karlya was in a drug state and started to grow annoyed with the gurgling sounds that Jerry was making and wanted it to stop. It was then that she grabbed the pickaxe and started swinging the tool into Jerry's body. Karlya admitted to becoming aroused by the action of stabbing Jerry. Danny then delivered the final blow to Jerry that killed him. Danny left the room, and Karlya slowly calmed down from the drug-fueled rage. She then saw a woman in Jerry's bed. Karlya had been so focused on Jerry, she didn't notice another person in the bed. Karlya struggled with the woman until Danny came back to the room. Once again in a rage, she kept hitting the woman with the pickaxe and finally stabbed her in the heart. That was all investigators needed to make their move. As Doug left Karlya's house, investigators were ready and waiting to catch him. Danny was arrested and taken into custody, just a block away from the house by Mosier as he was driving to work. At the same time, armed officers entered Karlya's house, which erupted into chaos. Karlya, along with James Liebrant, who happened to be visiting that day, were also arrested and taken into custody. All the friends present at Karlya's house were rounded up by police officers and taken in for questioning. At the police station, the friends who were taken in for questioning told officers everything they knew. All their stories were identical, and each of them explained that Karlya always hated Jerry. The only two individuals that kept silent throughout questioning were Karlya and Danny. Karlya told investigators that she was so heavily under the influence of drugs that she couldn't recall anything about the night of the murders. Karlya and Danny were arrested and charged on the evening of July 20th, 1983, with capital murder for the killing of Jerry Dean and Deborah Thornton. They were both detained at the Harris County Jail without bail. In September 1983, Karlya and Danny were tried separately for the murders of Jerry and Deborah. Karlya was charged with both murders, but after testifying at Danny's confession, the charge for the murder of Deborah was dropped. Danny, too, was only charged for Jerry's murder. Karlya entered a plea of not guilty and remained behind bars awaiting trial. Prison officials said that Karlya remained outspoken and brash while in custody. She didn't seem to care about anything or anyone, but all that was about to change after she found religion. While awaiting trial, Karlya had started to sober up from her years of alcohol and drug consumption. As her mind started to clear, she began reading books from the jail library. It was then that she picked up a copy of the Bible for the first time. Karlya reportedly told officials, fellow prisoners, and ministry officials that it was the first time she started to understand the consequences of her action. While in prison, she began attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. Through these regular sessions, she met others who had destroyed their lives by abusing alcohol and drugs. Inspired by their stories, Karlya began her own Bible studies group and made a decision to better herself through understanding.
That, as you said, there's a freedom in it. When I was forgiven and I experienced that forgiveness, it freed me up inside to soar, it freed me up inside to go higher and to go deeper with the Lord. But when we're holding unforgiveness, we're blocking communication and intimacy with the Lord in our own lives, and bitterness can start to take root in us. Well, when God forgave me, I think he used that forgiveness and that love to reach down inside of me and take every root of evil, every root of horror that was in me, and literally pull it up and get rid of it and go back in me and fill up with his love.
But her newfound identity was not enough to save her, and justice still needed to be served. In April 1984, Karlya went on trial for the murder of Jerry Dean. She pleaded not guilty, but promised that she would tell everyone the truth. Karlya admitted to being under the heavy influence of drugs and alcohol at the time of the murders. Her defense team, too, used that angle and told the court that it was not a premeditated murder, but a sudden explosion of anger during the robbery fueled by substances that led to the killings. Some of the witnesses brought in by the prosecution also supported this idea. They believed that Karlya and Danny were unable to distinguish right from wrong at the time of the murders. The jury deliberated for an hour before coming to the decision that Karlya was guilty on all charges. She was given a chance to testify on her own behalf before the judge made a final decision. Karlya spoke for nearly 5 hours and told the court of the life she once led. She then explained that it was while in prison she began to understand every action she had taken so far. Despite the impassioned speech, Karlya was sentenced to death by lethal injection.
Took a little while, didn't it?
Karlya became the only woman on death row in Texas. She went on to testify in Danny Garrett's trial in November of 1984. During her testimony, she told the court that she hoped he wouldn't be convicted. However, these hopes were dashed as Danny was also sentenced to death by lethal injection. It was the last time Karlya and Danny ever saw each other. He was taken to a detention facility just outside of Huntsville, Texas, while Karlya spent her remaining days in Gatesville Prison, Texas. Between 1984 and 1992, retrials and appeals made on behalf of Karlya were denied. But Karlya had, over the years, gained a following of support. The legal system may have recognized her as a murderer, but to many people, she was the icon of reform. Initially, she had accepted her fate to die by lethal injection, but following the death of Danny Garrett in 1993 due to liver disease, Karlya decided to fight her case and held on to the hope. She had also found love and married prison chaplain Dana Lane Brown in 1995. She made an appeal on June 22, 1997 for her death to be commuted to life in prison. Those that supported her included Pope John Paul II, Italian Prime Minister Romano Prodi, Speaker of the House U.S. Representative Newt Gingrich, and televangelist Pat Robertson. In a surprising turn of events, Ronald Carlson, Deborah's brother, and Peggy Kurtz, Jerry's sister, also spoke out on behalf of Karlya's sentence being commuted after seeing the transformation she had undergone while in prison. Even the warden of Texas's Huntsville prison testified that Karlya was a model inmate.
The fate of Karlya Faye Tucker now rests in the hands of the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles. It's up to them to recommend whether her death sentence should be reduced to life in prison. But it's up to Governor George W. Bush to decide if it will be.
On January 28, 1998, the Texas Prison Board of Pardons and Paroles turned down her request. Karlya wrote a letter to Texas Governor George W. Bush, appealing her case and admitting what she had done was an act of utter cruelty. Hours before her execution, Governor Bush refused the final 11th hour appeal to block her execution. On February 2, 1998, Karlya requested a peach, a banana, and garden salad with ranch dressing as her last meal. News channels documented her final hours.
Karlya Faye Tucker's apparent last day began at 6 behind the walls of this unit of the Texas State Prison System. Continuing her fast, the 39-year-old convicted murderer declined breakfast and has been refusing to eat.
I don't know what's going to happen either way, but I have to surrender that to the Lord.
Prison officials say she met with family from 8 until about noon. They hope to make her final hours as calm as possible, but say this will not be an easy day for anyone.
That's a traumatic situation for everybody involved, not only for the inmate, but also the inmates' families, for our correctional officers, and we try to keep...
There appears to be little chance the courts will stop the execution, but there are demonstrators here asking the sentence be commuted to life in prison.
We hope that Governor Bush will decide to show mercy in this case.
Tucker was convicted of killing Jerry Lynn Dean with a pickaxe and has also admitted killing Deborah Thornton as well. Thornton's husband says people should not feel any compassion for Tucker.
The same person who looks out from that television set is the same person who looked straight at my wife and threw a pickaxe into her body.
I'm not afraid of dying.
Tucker is a born-again Christian, and while she says she's not afraid of dying, her attorneys continue to fight for her life in both state and federal courts.
On February 3, 1998, Karlya was led to the execution chamber. She requested that her sister Carrie, husband Dana, and friends Jackie Onken and Ronald Carlson be present at her execution. Karlya was pronounced dead at 6:45 p.m., 8 minutes after receiving the injection. Karlya was the first woman executed in Texas in 135 years since the reinstatement of capital punishment. Many spoke out after the execution. She was laid to rest at Forest Park Lawndale Cemetery in Houston.
Protesters came in support of Karlya Faye Tucker and in support of executing her.
It is a tear in the fabric of society when a murder happens. The death penalty is the thread and needle to sew it back together again.
Tucker, in 1983, was convicted of killing Jerry Lynn Dean with a pickaxe and admitted killing Thornton's wife, Deborah. Tucker found God and turned her life around, apparently. Enough for forgiveness from Texas Governor George W. Bush, but not a reprieve.
The courts, including the United States Supreme Court, have reviewed the legal issues in this case, and therefore I will not grant a 30-day stay. May God bless Karlya Faye Tucker, and God bless her victims and their families.
The governor okayed the execution after the U.S. Supreme Court rejected 2 last-minute appeals. It, along with Texas's state courts and parole board, denied her clemency.
We feel like the system and the process has got to be changed. And that's no greater evidence than with Karlya.
In the end, the sentence was carried out with a sense of loss imposed upon the Tucker family and peace for the Thorntons.
As she was dying, I did ask God to have mercy on her soul. It was the right thing to do. And her dying was also the right thing to do.
After her execution, accusations were made against Governor Bush and his lack of empathy for Karlya during her appeal process. However, Governor Bush would later issue a statement in which he said that he had forgiven Karlya, but she still needed to face justice for taking the lives of 2 people. Karlya became the subject of several movie adaptations that depicted her dysfunctional upbringing and how it eventually led down the path of crime. Years later, captain of the Death House team Richard Allen would tell Werner Herzog that Karlya's execution led to him having an emotional breakdown. Allen resigned from his position in the Texas prison system and changed his position of being pro-capital punishment and the death penalty. He went to tell Herzog that no one had the right to take another life, even if it was the law. For his part in the crime, James Liebrant was charged with accessory to murder and testified against Karlya and Danny. However, there has never been more information about his sentencing or whereabouts since the murders occurred. The murders of Jerry Dean and Deborah Tucker were indeed senseless and horrific. However, Karlya's reformation had changed the opinions of many who only saw her as a drug-addicted murderer. Her execution divided many who fought against their own moral obligations. So today, we ask you, do you believe that Karlya deserved the death penalty? Shouldn't her transformation in prison have been considered, leading to a change in her sentence to life imprisonment? Let us know in the comments section below. September 5th, 2017. when a 31-year-old teacher, Laura Wallen, didn't show up for work, everyone was shocked and concerned, as it had never happened before. When one of Laura's co-workers reached out to her family, they became more worried because the day before she went missing, Laura had sent a strange text to her sister. This was unusual behavior for Laura, who also happened to be 4 months pregnant. The search for Laura began, but there was no sign of her. However, the investigation started to reveal clues that led police to uncover some dark secrets that could untangle the mystery behind Laura's disappearance. How did Laura disappear? What did she say in her text message? Had Laura found herself entangled in a dangerous situation? On Tuesday, September 5th, 2017, the students at the Wild Lake High School in Columbia, Maryland, were looking forward to the new academic year. They were especially looking forward to welcoming back their favorite social science teacher, 31-year-old Laura Wallen. However, Laura had not returned after the summer vacation. The school faculty was also puzzled by Laura's absence. She was known for her dedication, and not the type to miss school without a valid reason. She had also been preparing her class and lessons, eagerly looking forward to her students' return. When the school management team failed to contact Laura, they decided to notify Laura's family about her absence. They were surprised to find out that her family was also looking for her, and had already made contact with the Montgomery County Police Department.
Her classroom was all set up for the start of the new school year, but on the first day, Laura Wallen never showed.
She was absent. Again, very unusual. I'm very committed to her job.
Wallen teaches social studies at Wild Lake High School. In 2016, she was awarded Teacher of the Year. On Monday, the day before the school year was set to begin, she reportedly sent a distressing text message to her family.
It is troubling that the family was alarmed enough to call the police department and get detectives to start investigating where she may be. So it was alarming enough that the family said, we need to call police.
Laura's parents informed the police officers that they were concerned for their daughter after her sister Jennifer received a strange text message from her. Officers performed a welfare check at Laura's home in Olney, Maryland, but she was nowhere to be found. Her vehicle, a 2011 black Ford Escape, was also missing from the driveway. A quick search around the house revealed that there was no sign of a struggle, as there was no broken glass from window panes or forced entry into Laura's house. Laura's parents suggested to the police that Laura was dating 33-year-old Tyler Tessier for 10 years. She also got pregnant once with Tyler's child. Tyler told officers he hadn't seen Laura since that past Sunday. It was as if she had vanished without a trace. Laura Elizabeth Wallen was born on February 10, 1986, to the family of Mark and Gwen Wallen. She was raised in Olney, Maryland, alongside her older sister Jennifer, with whom she shared a very close bond. Laura's greatest passion was being able to help others. No wonder she eventually had the passion to become a social science teacher. In 2016, she was even voted as the Teacher of the Year. According to Laura's family and fellow staff members, Laura was looking forward to the new school year, and also had been preparing for her classes and lessons, eagerly awaiting the return of her students. On the surface, there was no reason for Laura to disappear suddenly. The investigation, launched on September 5, 2017, was headed by Montgomery County Police Chief Tom Manger. The chief and other officers joined Laura's family and beloved students to find her. Saquon Maxwell, a former student of Laura's, rallied a community group of more than 20 people to distribute flyers and inform residents in the neighborhood and school district about Laura's disappearance.
Had any instances that's happening for like 11 years.
Joyce Robinson lives near Wallen. She didn't know her personally, but is thinking about her and her family.
I would be praying for her. I hope she's okay.
A search was initiated of the neighborhood where Laura lived, and it was canvassed by police officers. They spoke to one neighbor who told them they had seen Tessier walking Laura's dog on September the 4th around 2:30 in the afternoon. Laura's 2011 black Ford Escape was also missing, so an alert was put out on that vehicle to all law enforcement officers. Volunteers came together to hand out missing persons flyers and to put up posters of Laura along with information about her. Appeals to the public for help in finding Laura were going out, and vigils were being planned.
Have you heard about the missing school teacher?
A community effort to help find a beloved teacher.
Let them know we feeling this just as much as them, bro.
Saquon Maxwell says he had Laura Wallen as a teacher, but says she's much more than that to so many people.
She's always willing to put her students first, so I know if one of us was in this situation, she would have been head on, attacking it and in the streets just like we are.
He says he organized a meeting at Wild Lake High School where Wallen teaches on Saturday. A group of about 20 met up, got a stack of flyers, and hit the streets in Columbia.
My heart goes out to her wherever she is.
I feel like I'm doing something. I feel like I'm helping to find her. I feel like the more people that know what's going on, the faster we can find her.
A small group then went to Olney, where their former teacher lives. They went door to door, talking to neighbors and giving hugs into the evening.
She had a spark and she cared beyond the classroom.
Spreading a message that Maxwell says hits too close to home.
Police officers started interviewing residents in Laura's neighborhood, asking questions and monitoring the areas between Howard and Montgomery County. Laura's father, Mark, appealed to the media, urging anyone with information to come forward and help them find his daughter.
I wanted to let Laura know that we're out there looking for her and we're not giving up on her. The hardest things a father can do is have her child taken away way too soon.
The intensive search for Laura was about to pay off. On September 7th, 2017, an employee from the Gramercy Gated Complex in Columbia, Maryland, made an interesting discovery on Thursday evening. He discovered Laura's license and a cell phone in one of the complex's dumpsters. When police arrived at the scene, they also found Laura's vehicle backed into a parking spot in the complex. What struck them as odd was that the complex was just across the highway from Wild Lake High School, where Laura worked. It had police questioning why Laura would park there. Police took the evidence in for further investigation as they looked further into Laura's background and questioned those closest to her. The investigation team split into two groups. One group focused on retracing Laura's digital footprint, and the other questioned her family members and boyfriend. Investigators searched Laura's computer and cell phone for information that could help determine where she had been. Her car was thoroughly examined for evidence, and investigators meticulously searched through financial transactions and cell phone records to find any clues about her whereabouts. Meanwhile, police also interviewed Laura's parents and sister. According to Laura's father, Mark, the family had planned a trip for the Labor Day weekend, but Laura decided to spend time with her boyfriend Tyler instead. This was confirmed by her sister Jennifer, who informed the police that Laura thought Tyler might propose to her. Jennifer was asked for more details about this claim. She also gave the police the text message she and Laura exchanged over the weekend. In the messages, Laura informed Jennifer that Tyler was planning to take her on a countryside adventure on Saturday, September 2nd. Mark also mentioned that Tyler had expressed his desire to marry Laura after they found out she was pregnant. However, Jennifer then pointed out that something had changed by Monday morning, September 4th, after Laura sent her an unusual text message. The tone of Laura's text seemed off, and she had told Jennifer that she was convinced that the baby was not Tyler's, but it was Antoine's. Jennifer told officers that it sounded suspicious because Antoine was Laura's ex-boyfriend, and she hadn't seen him in over 2 years. She also told police that Laura had spelled her ex-boyfriend Antoine's name incorrectly. When Jennifer tried to call Laura, there was no answer, and no more responses. When the family returned on Monday evening, September 4th, they found that Laura was not at home. Instead, she had left candles burning and her pet dog locked up inside. The family kept insisting that it would be a good idea to question Tyler, as he was the last person to see Laura. Tyler agreed to speak with the police and explained his weekend with Laura. He admitted that he had taken her to Damascus, Maryland, to show her some property he was considering buying. Tyler told the officers that his intention was to build a house where they could raise their family together. He said Laura was excited about the idea of starting their new family in the countryside. Tyler explained that they returned to Olney later that evening and planned to go back the next day. But things had changed that Sunday, September 3rd. According to Tyler, their adventure was going well, but Laura was not as happy as she was the day before. While they were in Damascus, the couple had an argument, but Tyler did not want to provide further details about the conflict to the police. He informed officers that Laura insisted on going back to her house. Upon their return to her place, Laura reportedly asked Tyler to return his set of house keys and leave her alone. Not wanting to upset her further, especially because she was pregnant, Tyler agreed to give Laura some space and suggested her to take some time to calm down. He then informed the officers that they had planned to meet for breakfast at the Columbia Mall on Monday morning, September 4th, to discuss things. However, Laura did not show up, and when Tyler went to her house, he did not see any sign of her. Tyler explained to the officers that he couldn't enter the house because he did not have the key. Unknown to Tyler, the officers became suspicious after hearing this statement. During their interviews with Laura's neighbors, one mentioned seeing Tyler walking Laura's dog at 2:30 p.m. on Monday, September 4th. Officers found this suspicious, as Tyler had already told them he was unable to enter Laura's house without his key. It made them wonder, how was he able to walk the dog, when Laura's father Mark and sister Jennifer said they had found the dog locked in the house. But the police did not let him know this bit of information just yet. Suspicion was building up around Tyler, and police requested his phone records from him. He gave them permission to search through his phone records before leaving the first interview. But police also placed a tracker on Tyler's vehicle to monitor his movements without his knowledge. Over the following week, police persisted in their search for Laura, hoping for the best outcome while preparing for the worst. They also monitored Tyler's activities and found that he had visited the field in Damascus 10 times since Laura went missing. The investigation into both Laura and Tyler's records also showed some interesting information. Police discovered a debit card transaction made by Laura at a Safeway in Olney on the evening of September 2nd. After getting a hold of surveillance footage from the store, they were able to determine that Laura and Tyler had been together that evening. Further records showed that Tyler and Laura's phones had followed the same cell tower since that Saturday evening. But from Sunday, Laura's had suddenly stopped moving around. Tyler's phone also revealed that he had texted a friend on Sunday evening, requesting a late-night ride because he needed help cleaning up a mess. However, the friend turned down Tyler's request. Fingerprint analysis also revealed that both Laura and Tyler's fingerprints were found in her vehicle and on Laura's cell phone and license that was discovered in the dumpster in Columbia. This prompted police to bring Tyler in for further questioning. This time around, police were armed with the new evidence from the discovery of Laura's belongings and the cell phone data. When police asked Tyler about his movements with Laura's cell phone, why his fingerprints were on her belongings, and the cryptic message he had sent his friend, the case took a new twist. According to Tyler, Laura had gotten herself into serious trouble. Tyler alleged that Laura was not expecting his child, but instead had an affair with a student that resulted in a pregnancy. Police were astounded by this claim as Tyler continued to give them this statement. Tyler told officers that he was trying to buy Laura some time to sort out her problem. He had taken her vehicle, license, and cell phone and discarded them in the apartment complex in order to give her a head start to escape from her problems before her family came to find out. He admitted that he tried to mislead everyone so that he could help Laura because he cared about her. When officers tried to get more information about Laura's whereabouts out of Tyler, he denied any knowledge of her current location. But police were not convinced with this new story. Investigators did not reveal to Tyler that they had been looking into other messages that had been discovered on his phone. These messages had painted a different picture of Tyler and Laura's relationship, and it was something investigators took a keen interest in. The suspicions regarding Tyler were planted in the minds of the investigators. They decided to dig deeper into his life. Text messages found on Tyler's phone revealed that Laura was not his only girlfriend. Police discovered that Tyler and Laura had a rocky relationship over the past 10 years. This interrogation was brought on by comments made by Laura's father, Mark. According to Mark, he was concerned about Tyler and Laura's future together because he always felt something was off about Tyler. In the last 10 years of their relationship, Tyler never spent significant days with Laura, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, family trips, or birthdays. Mark believed that Tyler never made Laura a priority. Mark also knew about another woman Tyler was dating, named Christina Wagner, who was also a teacher like Laura. After further investigation, police tracked down friends of both Christina and Tyler, which uncovered Tyler's double life. They learned that Tyler met Christina in 2012 and was living with her while still in a relationship with Laura. According to these friends, Tyler and Christina recently got engaged and planned to marry in 2018. When questioned about Laura, they mentioned that Tyler claimed Laura had allegedly been stalking him and became unstable after their breakup years ago. Through text messages discovered on Laura's phone, officers knew that Laura had tried to reach out to Christina on August 28, 2017. The message from Laura stated that she wanted to meet with Christina to discuss Tyler. Friends claim that Christina was upset by Laura's assertiveness, so she confronted Tyler and decided to file a complaint at the police station. However, when the police told all three of them that they would need to go to court to get a restraining order, Tyler changed his mind and decided not to proceed. It was also revealed to police that Christina and Tyler had planned to go shopping for their wedding over the Labor Day weekend, but Tyler was unable to make it after injuring his knee. When police told Laura's family about Christina, they told officers what they had heard. According to Mark Wallen, Laura had told them that Tyler was being stalked by Christina. This new information made the case against Tyler being a possible suspect in Laura's disappearance more plausible. They now needed to overcome his defenses. Police once more brought Tyler in for questioning. When they confronted him about Christina, he denied the allegations. However, they were able to challenge his claim through the proof they discovered about his double life. Tyler eventually admitted that he had been cheating on both women, and that it was the reason for his and Laura's fight. He also told police that he wanted to make things right between Laura and himself. Investigators were hoping that Tyler would reveal Laura's condition and whereabouts, but he continued to deny any involvement in her disappearance. Without Tyler's knowledge, though, they were able to find a link between him and the vacant field in Damascus. Through Tyler's phone records, they found the number of a meat processing plant called KS Cuts. The plant was next to the property that Tyler visited in Damascus with Laura. The owner of the plant also happened to own the open field that the couple visited. Through interviews with the owner, they discovered that Tyler had worked for the owner and often helped him hunt for game on the property. Further questioning of the owner revealed a chilling detail. Over the Labor Day weekend, Tyler had contacted the man and asked if he could access the safe on the property. In the safe were 4 .20 caliber rifles with ammunition. Police now knew that Laura was possibly dead, but they couldn't confront Tyler just yet. They still needed to find Laura and prove their suspicions correct. Instead, they devised a scheme, along with Laura's family, that could possibly help them implicate Tyler in his own web of lies. On Monday, September 11th, Laura's parents, Mark and Gwen, joined Tyler at a press conference to appeal for Laura's safe return. The entire thing had been planned by both the police and Laura's family, hoping that Tyler would slip up and reveal Laura's whereabouts. In the meantime, teams of police officers and cadaver dogs went out searching the fields of Damascus near the meat processing plant. During the press conference, Tyler made a heartfelt plea for Laura's safe return. In his speech, he alluded to the idea that Laura should not be ashamed for anything she could have possibly done wrong. He also asked for her to come back, so that he, along with her family, could work through things together and solve any problems she may have had.
Laura, if you're listening, doesn't matter what's happened, doesn't matter what type of trouble, there's nothing we can't fix together. Myself and your family. I don't know where she is, that's all. I don't know. I know we're all trying to do everything we can to find her, and I just pray that she's safe and she comes back. That's all I care about right now.
Tyler played his part as the worried boyfriend without any idea that he was the person of interest in the case. But the story was about to take a dark and twisted turn. On September 13th, just 2 days after the press conference, Laura Wallen was no longer considered a missing person. Her body had been discovered in a shallow grave in the open field at Damascus. Police found tire tracks leading to a freshly dug area. In the soil, they noticed a piece of purple fabric sticking out. Upon digging into the area, they uncovered Laura Wallen's body. They were able to match Laura's clothes in the picture Jennifer had shown them during her final conversation with Laura. It was a tragic end to a desperate search.
To the family, friends, and students of Laura Wallen, we are so sad to report tonight that the Wild Lake High School Teacher of the Year was killed.
The tragedy was made greater by the death of Laura's unborn child. Police arrested Tyler that same day, and yet again, he tried to worm his way out of the situation. He was held at the county jail as investigators waited to receive the initial autopsy report. They confirmed that Laura had been shot in the back of the head before being buried in the field. When Tyler was confronted with this information, he tried to defend himself. According to Tyler, he and Laura had been at her house on Sunday evening when a group of African American men stormed into the house and held them hostage at gunpoint. They then drove out to Damascus with both Laura and Tyler. After begging for them to spare his life, the men turned their attention to Laura and shot her in the head before making him bury her in the field. They then threatened to come after him if he revealed their identities, or led police to Laura's body any earlier. Police did not buy this story, and told Tyler they knew about his connection to the owner of the property. Tyler then told officers another version of events. This time he claimed that he and Laura had gotten into an argument, and after he pushed her over, she had fallen and hit her head. He assumed Laura had died after losing consciousness and took her to the field to hide her body. However, after he buried her, he felt that there was a possibility she was still holding on to life by a thread. Instead of leaving her to suffer a painful death, he dug out the grave, shot her in the head, and covered up his tracks. Tyler claimed it was a mercy killing. Tyler remained in custody without bail at Montgomery County Detention Center. Laura and her unborn son, baby Reed, were honored in a public ceremony attended by over 1,000 people on September 30th, 2017. As Laura's family, friends, and students bid their final farewells to the beloved teacher, the prosecution was preparing their case against Tyler. Montgomery County State Attorney John McCarthy was the prosecutor handling the case. Both the prosecution and investigation team developed their theory around Tyler's double life. They believed that Tyler was more than willing to continue living a double life until Laura confronted Christina through a text message on August 28th. Knowing that his luck was about to run out, Tyler started to plan a way to get rid of Laura so that he could continue his life with Christina. Labor Day weekend proved to be the ideal opportunity for him to enact his plan. Not only was Christina going to be out of town, but so was Laura's family. In that way, no one could ask him where Laura was until the weekend was over, and he had enough time to devise a cover story. He had chosen the location because he was familiar with the area, and he knew his friend had the necessary equipment he needed to carry out the plan. It was also an isolated area that people would not think to find Laura in. Tyler then created the story of Laura's infidelity to mislead her family and the investigation. He planted her vehicle and belongings near the school she taught at as the perfect cover-up for her alleged escape from the potential drama of her alleged affairs. Tyler had hoped that his plan would work and that by the time anyone discovered Laura's remains, it would be too late. What he failed to understand was that he made careless errors and changed his story too often. This led to police doubting him from the outset. Furthermore, he underestimated Laura's family, who realized that Tyler's relationship with Laura had been strange from the very beginning, as he never did fully commit to her like a serious partner would. The prosecution had already prepared a watertight argument. However, according to Maryland law, Tyler would only be charged with the murder of Laura, as the unborn child's death was not covered by the county's constitution. That decision was left to be contested during Tyler's trial in September of 2018. However, on September 6, 2018, justice for Laura and baby Reed came to a startling halt.
Prosecutors say Tyler Tessier took the cowardly way out. On the first day, the jury would have heard evidence that he killed beloved teacher Laura Wallen.
It brings a dramatic end to a crime that shocked the state.
He had chosen to take his own life, rather than face punishment for his actions. According to reports, Tyler had left behind 5 separate letters, all of which indicated that he had intended to end his life for some time. Although Laura's family never got to see justice for their daughter and unborn grandson, her mother Gwen said that she had found some sense of peace in Tyler's cowardly death. She referred to Tyler as being a diabolical human and was worried that her family would have to live in a society in which Tyler existed. Now she believed that chapter was finally behind them. Gwen and her family could finally rest, knowing that justice for Laura and baby Reed had been served. Today's case is tragically senseless in its execution and will undoubtedly leave many questioning if they are truly safe with those they trust. It is tragic that both Laura and her unborn child died because of the man she thought she would build a happy family with. So what are your thoughts on today's case? Were there any signs that could have alerted Laura to Tyler's intentions? Or, like many others, did her love for Tyler blind her? On Monday, June 14, 2004, Tamika Huston's family reported her missing. She was 24 years old. Tamika was independent and spontaneous, sometimes going days without contacting her family. However, this time was different. She had been out of touch for weeks, which was unusual. Immediately, the family contacted the Spartanburg Police Department in South Carolina, requesting a welfare check on Tamika. Upon searching her house, they noticed that many things didn't align with what they were told about Tamika's personality. That raised questions for investigating officers, who launched an immediate search for the young woman. It's unclear whether Tamika had chosen to leave everything behind for her dreams, or was there a more sinister aspect to her disappearance? Tamika Antoinette Huston was born in Spartanburg on December 11, 1979, to parents Anthony Huston and Gabriella Simonehi. She had an older stepbrother named Shaquan, a younger brother named Anthony Jr., and a sister named Antonia. Tamika was described as having a warm and welcoming personality. She was always smiling and made friends easily. After graduating high school, Tamika began working as a waitress. She moved out of her parents' house and settled into her own small house on Harvard Drive in Spartanburg. Tamika had a love for animals. Once she had her own place, she adopted a pit bull named Macy. Tamika was also very religious and participated in her church, particularly the church choir. She loved to sing and intended on pursuing a career in the music industry. In 2003, she auditioned for the popular reality show American Idol in Atlanta, Georgia, but did not get through the first round. After realizing that achieving her dream of performing would be a challenging journey, Tamika decided to return to nursing school and found satisfaction in her new passion. In May of 2004, as the school term came to a close, the summer holidays approached. Tamika looked forward to a well-needed break from nursing school and exams. She was known to make sudden decisions to visit friends and family.
She didn't have a job to go to every morning. She was very spontaneous. She was the type of person to get in her car and kind of go.
Initially, her family was not concerned by her lack of communication. However, her aunt Rebecca Howard grew concerned when she discovered Tamika hadn't been responding to her mother's calls for 2 weeks.
I called police and said that there's clearly something wrong. I can't locate my niece. She's not returning anyone's phone calls.
Rebecca contacted the Spartanburg Police Department, believing something may have happened to Tamika. Officers from the department agreed to perform a welfare check, but suggested to Rebecca that Tamika might have simply decided to take a trip out of town. When they arrived at Tamika's home, they first noticed that her car, a 1991 black Honda CRX, was missing, and the doors to her house were all locked. They walked around the house and found one of the windows unlocked. Officers announced their presence, but received no response. Fearing something might have happened to her, they entered through the window. Inside the house, officers found some clues that didn't quite add up. They noticed an uncashed paycheck on the kitchen counter. The condition of the house revealed that there were no evident signs of a struggle. While checking through the rooms, officers started to smell something awful in the air. It was not a good sign, and officers intensified their search. What they discovered was a disturbing sight. In one of the rooms, they found Tamika's beloved pet dog Macy and a litter of puppies. What was upsetting was that Macy and her puppies were left alone without care. They were severely malnourished, and the room was in terrible condition. When officers reported their findings to Tamika's family, they suspected something bad might have happened to her. She was not the type of person to neglect Macy. The police quickly issued an all-points bulletin and a BOLO, which means be on the lookout, to find Tamika and her car. Meanwhile, her family in Spartanburg started handing out flyers with her information throughout the town. Tamika's family also contacted the local media in an attempt to gain more focus on her case. Detectives Steve Lamb and Jay Stedman were assigned to lead the investigation into Tamika's disappearance. They began the groundwork immediately and subpoenaed Tamika's banking and cell phone records in order to trace her movements. What they discovered was that Tamika had not made use of either her cell phone service or bank account since early May of 2004. The records backed up the family's statements that no one had heard anything from Tamika since early May. The investigation initially seemed like a case of an adult running away, but the family gave detectives an interesting clue. While interviewing family members, Detectives Lamb and Stedman were repeatedly urged to investigate Terrence Moss, Tamika's ex-boyfriend. Many family members mentioned that Tamika and Terrence had recently experienced a difficult breakup. With this lead in hand, they conducted a background check on Terrence and found that he had a criminal record. A further check revealed an interesting twist in the investigation. Terrence was scheduled to appear in court for a domestic violence charge a week after Tamika was reported missing. The charge, ironically, was laid by Tamika, who had conveniently vanished before the hearing. This provided detectives a lead with motive. They had two possibilities. Firstly, Tamika could have fled the city to avoid appearing in court and testifying against Terrence. The second possibility, however, was more sinister. There was speculation that Terrence might have abducted Tamika and could be holding her hostage, possibly in an attempt to avoid facing charges related to her failure to appear in court. They could not rule out either possibility, so their next step was to call in Terrence. On June 23, 2004, Terrence voluntarily visited the Spartanburg police station after detectives called him in for an interview. He told detectives that he was there to help them in any way possible in order to find Tamika. Detectives, however, were more interested in his relationship with Tamika. Terrence explained that he and Tamika met in the year 2000 and were living together until March of 2004. The detectives told Terrence they were aware about the fight between him and Tamika. He admitted to hitting her during an argument about his cheating.
I actually punched her. And I fell down on my knees and I started praying, and I was like, it's just so many demons in here that, we're becoming physical with each other now that we just need to separate.
After this, Tamika asked him to leave and filed a domestic abuse charge against him. When detectives presented their theories about what they suspected might have happened to Tamika, Terrence denied any involvement in her disappearance. He told officers that he regretted his actions during their argument and was genuinely concerned for her safety after he heard she was missing. Terrence became a person of interest after his interview with detectives, but without any physical evidence to link him to Tamika's disappearance, he was released. Investigators, however, were not giving up in their search for Tamika. They began by checking recent hospital admissions and reviewing files at local mortuaries for any unidentified women reported between May and June of 2004. They also searched through accident reports and reviewed 911 calls made during that period. It was then that they came across a rather distressing piece of information. Someone had called to report the murder of a woman and explained that her body was dumped in the Cleveland Park Lake, not very far from Tamika's house. The call was made in June, around the same time she was reported missing. Investigators launched an immediate search of the area. Divers were sent into the lake and searched it thoroughly. Investigators on the ground also looked for a body among the hedges and trees using cadaver dogs. Hours later, the search was called off after investigators concluded that there was no body to be found. To detectives, it sounded like a call made to divert their investigation. They tried to trace that call back to a location, but discovered it was made from a prepaid cell phone or burner phone near Cleveland Park Lake. This gave hope to the detectives because they believed Tamika might still be alive and could be rescued. Meanwhile, Tamika's family continued to keep the public informed about Tamika and her disappearance.
As a mother, it's very difficult not knowing where my daughter is or hoping that and thinking that she's okay and safe.
They offered a reward of $50,000 to anyone who could provide information that would lead to Tamika's discovery. Detectives received numerous tips, many of which were bogus. The leads that seemed promising ended up being cases of mistaken identity, leading investigators to dead ends. However, Tamika's family were not ready to give up yet, and their persistence would lead investigators to another promising lead. In July of 2004, a month after Tamika was reported missing, a woman contacted the Spartanburg Police Department about an abandoned car in her Barksdale apartment parking lot. She noticed it resembled the car shown in the missing person posters throughout the city. Investigators and forensic units rushed to the Barksdale apartment complex that was located just 4 miles away from where Tamika lived. The car looked exactly like the one Tamika owned, and after checking the license plates against their records, investigators confirmed that it was, in fact, Tamika's car. Now investigators had to determine whether Tamika abandoned the car herself or if someone else had parked it in the apartment complex. Forensic teams searched through the car, looking for any clues. There was no blood or scuff marks to suggest a struggle had occurred. However, after dusting down every surface, they found a partial fingerprint on the steering wheel. Under the front passenger seat, investigators discovered a set of keys. After weeks of searching for Tamika, they finally located a piece of evidence that could possibly unlock more answers in their investigation. Investigators questioned residents at Barksdale about whether they had seen anyone parking the car in the apartment parking lot. One resident said he had seen a single African-American man park the car and walk away. Another said he saw 2 African-American men abandoning the car. The reports were conflicting. Investigators had to rely on the evidence they found to point them in some direction: the partial fingerprint and the set of unknown keys. The fingerprint was uploaded to the Integrated Automated Fingerprint Identification System, but there was no match in the system. This allowed investigators to eliminate Terrence as a suspect. The only other clue investigators had was the set of keys. Detective Jay Stedman began the process of elimination by using the keys to unlock Tamika's car, but none of them worked. He then visited her house and tried using the keys to unlock the doors of the house. That too turned out to be a dead end. Investigators reasoned that if the keys did not belong to Tamika, then they must have belonged to the person responsible for her disappearance. A further look at the keys revealed a stamp with the code AA14 on the surface. These keys were then taken to all local locksmiths for identification. Fortunately, one of the locksmiths identified the key immediately. He told detectives that the keys were made for the Fremont School apartment complex in Spartanburg.
After looking through his records for a while, he finds who that code was, and that was for Fremont School Apartments.
Investigators learned the apartment complex was once an elementary school that had been converted into public housing. There were 46 apartments in total, and investigators tried to identify the house belonging to those keys. When they believed their luck had finally run out, the key unlocked a basement apartment which had been abandoned due to flooding. Nonetheless, investigators collected whatever evidence they could and sent this to the crime lab for testing. They also questioned the man who maintained the apartment complex. He told them that the basement apartment had been empty for a long time. He then explained the policy of the apartment's management team. The doorknobs on each apartment were switched around after a tenant was evicted. This avoided non-paying tenants from using their keys to re-enter the flat without the manager's knowledge,
so that the person who moved out can't come back later with a copied key and enter that apartment again.
However, the apartment records were poorly maintained, so he couldn't determine which apartment the doorknob had been changed from. Nevertheless, he had provided the investigators a list of previous tenants. The results from the crime lab were disappointing. They did not provide any evidence that proved Tamika had been in the apartment. Investigators then turned to the list of names of former tenants. Tamika's family didn't recognize any of the names on the list, but a close friend of hers said one of the names sounded familiar. For Tamika's family, the news was unexpected. Tamika's friend told investigators that Tamika mentioned a man named Chris, whom she had recently started dating after her split from Terrence.
Her best friend mentioned there's this guy named Chris that she started seeing around the time of her disappearance.
She wasn't sure about his last name, but there was a tenant on the list named Christopher Hampton. Investigators ran a background check on Christopher. The results raised many questions. 23-year-old Christopher had a criminal history. He was convicted on a charge of bank robbery in May of 2000 and had served 4 years for the crime. He was in the middle of serving a 30-day sentence after being arrested for a traffic violation, but he had broken the conditions of his parole. Christopher was sent to jail without a hearing. However, at the time of Tamika's disappearance, he was not in jail and had also been evicted from his flat at the Fremont School apartment a month after she was reported missing. The police were successful in locating him, and the investigators brought Christopher in for questioning in late June 2004. He admitted that he was dating Tamika, but said he was not responsible for her disappearance. When asked where he thought Tamika was, Christopher replied that she had mentioned something about going to Bike Week.
She said, I want to go to Bike Week.
She said who she was going with?
No, she didn't say. She said she was going.
Did you see her at any point after that?
Nah, that was the last time I seen her.
His fingerprints were checked against the partial print found in Tamika's car. Investigators were certain that Christopher's fingerprints would match. However, their hopes at finding a lead hit an unexpected dead end. The fingerprints were not a match. Investigators were at a loss. Every lead they had was drying up. With no physical evidence to link him to Tamika's disappearance, police allowed him to return to jail. He was released after serving his time in mid-July of 2004. It had been almost 3 months since Tamika's disappearance when investigators received yet another promising lead. It was an unexpected twist in the case. Within days of Christopher being questioned, a woman contacted investigators about Tamika's case. The woman, who identified herself as the ex-wife of Christopher Hampton. She told investigators that she knew Christopher was dating Tamika at the time of her disappearance, and she was following the case in the local media. The woman told investigators that she might have some evidence that would be helpful. She revealed that she was in possession of Christopher's wallet.
She says, I've got his wallet if y'all want to come look at it.
Further, she explained that he had sent her his wallet for safekeeping while he served his sentence. Inside the wallet, she discovered a red stain on one of the pictures he kept of her and their 2 children. She agreed to give the wallet to investigators if they were willing to come and collect it from her. The detectives grabbed the opportunity and paid Christopher's ex-wife a visit. After retrieving the wallet, they sent the photo to be tested for traces of human blood. The red spot was confirmed to be human blood. Investigators then contacted Tamika's parents, Anthony and Gabriella, and asked them to submit DNA samples to test against the blood sample. After a month of waiting, the results were ready. It turned out that the blood on the photo belonged to Tamika.
If it wasn't for that media coverage there, that young lady may have never came forward.
Once again, investigators tracked down Christopher and brought him in for questioning. He denied anything done to Tamika and argued that the blood could belong to anyone. Investigators told him that DNA evidence can't be wrong, but Christopher remained adamant about his innocence.
Whatever happened to Tamika happened right there in your apartment.
Yeah, I believe that. How you know her blood? It could be anybody's blood.
No, it can't be anybody's blood. How long you think we've been doing this? You don't know that we can tell one person's blood from another blood? You ever heard of DNA?
Yep.
Investigators believed Christopher was involved in harming Tamika based on the blood evidence, which indicated he could have caused her harm. However, they acknowledged that the evidence was largely circumstantial. Until Tamika's body was found, the evidence they had may not be able to stand up in court or in front of a jury. There was no way to prove if Christopher had murdered Tamika, or if she had been injured and escaped without informing anyone. If Christopher had been responsible for Tamika's death, without a body and an autopsy, there was no way to prove if it was murder, manslaughter, accidental, or self-defense. Investigators were unable to take further action. As time dragged on, Tamika's case remained open, but leads were far and few. Toward the end of 2004, though, another surprising lead presented itself. This lead was going to unravel the case completely. A young woman made contact with detectives from the Spartanburg Police Department. She claimed to have been dating Christopher during May of 2004. According to the young woman, she had been inside Christopher's apartment, apartment 215, around the time Tamika disappeared, and made note of several odd things. There was a large reddish-brown stain on the bedroom floor, and his dresser had been pushed up against the closet door. She told investigators she didn't want to let Christopher know what she had noticed. Instead, she spent the night with him in his apartment. When investigators questioned her further, they discovered she was only 15 years old at the time of Tamika's disappearance. She was scared that Christopher might do something to her if he found out she had told the investigators. The investigative team kept this secret, while they tried to get a warrant to search apartment 215 based on the new lead. Investigators were cautiously hopeful because they knew it had been a long time since Tamika disappeared, and any physical evidence left behind could have been affected by the new tenants living in the apartment. In July of 2005, 14 months after Tamika's disappearance, investigators obtained the search warrant for Christopher's former apartment. Forensic specialists joined investigators as they prepared to enter the apartment. The information provided by the young woman was accurate. It was obvious someone had tried to clean up something in the bedroom. On the carpeted floor, there was a large patch that had been bleached clean. When forensic investigators cut off the top layer of carpet, they found a large amount of dried blood. Investigators sprayed luminol in the bedroom and turned off the lights. Then the room illuminated quickly, revealing large patches of blood in the closet.
Something really bad and really violent happened. You immediately know that she was moved from here and taken into the closet and laid in the closet, because the one in the closet's the perfect size of a head.
They quickly tested the blood against samples from Tamika's parents and confirmed it was hers. It was a heartbreaking moment when investigators told Tamika's family the news.
I knew that my daughter was in an apartment and there was enough blood that my daughter could have died.
They surmised that Tamika may have been locked in the cupboard and bled to death while Christopher entertained an underage girl in the apartment that night. From the amount of blood evidence left behind, investigators were sure that Tamika was dead. Now, they had to find her body and give her family the peace they deserved. On Friday, August 12, 2005, Christopher was arrested for the murder of Tamika Huston and taken in for questioning at the Spartanburg police station. Christopher remained silent as investigators presented the evidence they found. Realizing the evidence against him was undeniable, Christopher stood up and informed investigators he was ready to cooperate. He then revealed he would lead them to the location where he had buried Tamika.
We said, where are we going? Are we going to the jail? Or are you going to show us where she's at? He says, I'll show you where she's at.
That afternoon, Christopher led police to a dense wooded area about 12 miles away from the city center. He pointed out the exact spot where he buried Tamika in a shallow grave. He informed investigators that he was confident about the location because he had placed 2 branches in the shape of a cross as a marker on the grave. Forensic teams began excavating the grave and discovered the skeletal remains of a female body. The skull, however, was missing, but the lower jaw was found. The remains were taken to a crime lab, and the teeth on the lower jaw were compared to Tamika's dental records. It was a match.
It was really a difficult time for our entire family, and to see my sister suffer so much. You never really recover fully from losing someone in that way.
It's like somebody taking a pitchfork that's burning and sticking it to your chest, the side your heart is on. There's no other way to describe this pain.
Christopher was taken back to the interrogation room where he confessed to what happened that night and how he killed Tamika. According to Christopher, Tamika had come to his apartment while he was getting ready to go out for the night. She demanded money from him, but he told her that he was trying to save money for the child he was expecting with another woman. This angered Tamika, as she was still upset about his apparent infidelity. The argument between the two escalated, and in a fit of anger, he hit her in the head with a hot iron. She started to bleed out on the bedroom floor, and he hurriedly wrapped her body in some bed sheets before stuffing her into his closet. He then propped the dresser up against the door in case the door accidentally opened and her body rolled out. Afterwards, he went out for the night and returned home with a young woman who he knew was underage. They had dinner in the apartment and then spent the night together. The next morning, he borrowed a friend's car and drove around with Tamika's body before finding a suitable place to bury her. Afterwards, he drove Tamika's car to another apartment complex and abandoned the vehicle. Unknowingly, he dropped his set of keys in the car. While he was in jail awaiting trial, Christopher gave reporters interviews and claimed that killing Tamika was an accident. He said that he felt deep regret every time he watched the news and saw Tamika's family reaching out to people for help in finding Tamika. He stated that a few months after he buried Tamika, he returned to the wooded area and dug up her body. He claimed that he intended to go to the police and turn himself in for committing the crime. However, he developed cold feet and changed his mind. Instead, he removed her skull and threw it in a dumpster in the city. Investigators believed his motive was to avoid police discovering both her identity and the extent of injuries he actually inflicted on Tamika. Spartanburg County Prosecutor Trey Gotti began preparing for the murder trial against Christopher Hampton. Investigators provided physical evidence, witness statements, and an actual recorded confession, making the state's case against Christopher airtight. Christopher pleaded not guilty at his arraignment and remained in the Spartanburg County Jail until his trial was set to begin in April of 2006. In the final week of March 2006, jury selections took place. On Monday, April 3, 2006, Christopher's murder trial began. There was a shocking twist when Christopher asked the judge permission to address the court. He decided to change his plea to guilty.
Are you guilty of the crime of murder?
Yes, sir. Christopher Hampton pled guilty the morning we were set to draw the jury, and I was surprised that he pled guilty. We were ready, had opening statement. I was going to try the case with another prosecutor in my office. We were ready.
Christopher's defense team argued for the judge to consider his admission of guilt as a sign of remorse and sentence him to a maximum term of 40 years behind bars. Tamika's family were present at the trial, and the judge allowed her mother Gabriella to speak on their behalf before he passed his sentence. She told the court that Christopher deserved a life sentence. He had put them through tremendous suffering for over 15 months and had taken from them the light of their lives. Christopher was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He remains behind bars at Broad River Prison in South Carolina. Recent reports from the prison show Christopher in a less than favorable light. He is known to have broken several prison rules and has had many privileges revoked as a result. Tamika's disappearance might have been a tragedy for her family and friends, but it highlighted a social issue within the media industry itself. In 2004, when Tamika was declared missing, the media coverage in her hometown was extensive. However, her family had no success in getting her story out nationally. Tamika's disappearance was overshadowed by cases of Lacey Peterson, Lori Hacking, Jennifer Wilbanks, and Natalie Holloway.
If you were to just watch the coverage that we've seen over the years, you would think there was like an epidemic of young missing white women in this country. And for I think a number of years, particularly the cable networks, they found a formula that worked. And they saw when they covered these cases like a Natalie Holloway or a Lacey Peterson, and we saw it really recently with Gabby Petito, when they covered these cases like they were soap operas with constant updates and little twists and turns. They saw, people were engaging online, people were tuning into these stories, so that worked for them, and they kept doing it. Which is, I always say, those women, their families, miss them and love them just as much as I love Tamika. They certainly deserve their stories to be told, but not to the exclusion of my niece and other women and girls who look like Tamika. And that's the roadblock that I, ran into.
It was around 2005 that the term missing white woman syndrome was coined. It referred to the media's extensive coverage of cases involving white women over people of color. Rebecca saw the unfair news coverage and tried to change her approach. Her attempt to bring attention to cases of missing women of color had an impact. Derica, a retired police officer, and her sister-in-law, Natalie Wilson, had noticed the intense fight Tamika's Aunt Rebecca had put up to have her story heard. Inspired by Rebecca and Tamika's story, the Wilson sisters founded the Black and Missing Foundation in 2008. The nonprofit organization aimed to bring awareness to missing persons of color and provide the families of these people with the vital resources and tools to cope through the difficult times. The foundation also worked to educate the minority community on personal safety. Since that day, they have brought closure to over 300 missing persons cases and produced a docuseries titled Black and Missing that was inspired by Tamika's case.
Black and Missing, an HBO docuseries shining a light on missing persons cases nationwide.
One of the cases that's highlighted is a case that happened in Spartanburg, South Carolina, my hometown, Tamika Huston. Tamika went missing in 2004, and Tamika's case is the inspiration behind the Black and Missing Foundation.
Tamika's aunt has been a longtime advocate in her niece's case.
A lot of focus, particularly in my interview, is with the lack of media attention that I was able to get for Tamika's case. And, I would just like to say that certainly was not the case locally.
The series is built around the work of the Black and Missing Foundation, focused on missing people of color.
This really connects you with the family. It really gives you that insight, that struggle that families are dealing with, but more importantly, how do we come together?
In the series, Wilson details the collaboration with law enforcement, journalists, and the community. Families like Tamika's hopeful the series changes the outlook on missing persons cases.
So I'd really like for people to be able to watch this documentary with an open heart, open mind, and think about the way it is that we view who is important, who deserves to be covered.
It's our job to bring them home.
In 2022, Tamika's story became the focus of a podcast titled Finding Tamika. The podcast is centered around Tamika's disappearance and subsequent murder. Her story, the producers included, the impact Tamika's case had on missing women coverage conversations. It also helped highlight the invisibility of women of color when it comes to missing persons cases. Following the death of Tamika, her family continued to suffer with her loss. Although her Aunt Rebecca used their family tragedy to help the minority community, Tamika's father Anthony never fully recovered from her death. According to Anthony's friend Mike Fowler, he was a successful man who had a smile that could light up a room. He described Anthony as being driven to find Tamika when she was reported missing. After Tamika's death, Anthony became a shell of his former self. On January 9, 2017, tragedy struck the Huston family once more. Paramedics were called to the home of Anthony Huston. Exactly who made the call was never made public. He was found dead in the home he shared with his wife, Joan. He had suffered a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head. Joan, too, had been shot and was still alive when emergency services arrived. However, she later died in the hospital. The investigation concluded that it was an apparent murder-suicide. Friends close to the couple said there were never any visible signs as to what led to such a tragedy. The couple were the picture of love and devotion. It was clear that no one else would understand what issues they were battling in their personal lives. The impact of Tamika's death was felt in two ways within her family. Her Aunt Rebecca used the tragedy to create awareness and bring about a change, while her father Anthony suffered in silence to the very end. Our case today opens many channels for debate. But here are some things for you, our viewer, to consider. Do you think Tamika's case will have an impact on society? Do you believe that Christopher Hampton felt any remorse for killing Tamika? Is the missing white woman syndrome trend still a cause for concern in current media trends? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. Also, please remember to subscribe to our channel, like and share our videos with like-minded individuals. If you have a true crime story you would like us to cover, leave a message in the comment section below. Until next time, stay safe.